Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Friday. It's the end of another week of the offseason. It's also the end of our State of the Program series. Today, we are talking about the Notre Dame secondary, a unit that we all believe to be one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. We're breaking this down into three different parts. Part one, we're talking about the cornerback room. Obviously, they return the best cornerback in the country in Leonard Moore. We're going to talk about the other pieces that make up that room and the role that Aaron Henry is going to play with this secondary as a whole this season. Part two, we're talking about the safeties. Obviously, we are two guys that believe that Notre Dame returns two of the best safeties in all of college football, one of the best, if not the best safety duo in college football. We'll talk about what makes up that room. Part three of today's show, we're going to be talking about the future of the room. There are some areas where Notre Dame is a little bit thinner than what we would like, so recruiting classes in 2027 and 2028 are going to have to be on the up and up. And then obviously some players in the 25 and 26 classes are going to have to continue to develop and rise to that occasion. And then we're wrapping everything up today, folks, with the mailbag. So ask any questions about safeties, secondaries, about Notre Dame, college football, some recruiting questions I'm sure will be floated in there. So great way to end the week here, Brian.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know, this series took a little bit longer than we anticipated because the Notre Dame coaching staff was like, oh, yeah, Driscoll, you have your next 2 weeks perfectly planned out. We got something for you. We're going to get a whole bunch of commitments and force you guys to have to mess up your schedule, which we kind of appreciate. So we're all about that. So we're going to be able to wrap this up, Trev. And then next week, just as a quick heads up, next week we're bringing back Buy, So Hold in the Friday mailbag. So we will be back to our regularly scheduled events for a little bit. Starting on Monday, we'll have our midweek rundown, which we kind of did this week a little bit because we had some stuff we had to say. And boy, if a couple articles that have come out since then had come out before that day, those rants might have been epic, my friend. But yeah, this is a big one because obviously this is one of those positions where it's kind of like the D-line. We in linebacker, like we think it's going to be really good. It should be really good. It's really talented. But there's just enough question marks, and not so much linebacker, more D-line. The linebacker thing is just the new coach. But it's very similar to D-line where lots of talent, you know, proven guys coming back, high potential NFL draft picks, but there's just enough questions to say we don't quite know just how good it's going to be this season. And we definitely don't necessarily know how good it's going to be in the future because of certain question marks we're going to address today. But it is, I tell you, man, it's come a long way. I was thinking the other day actually it was been yesterday when I was thinking about what the game plan for today's show was going to be. And I remember a show I did back when I worked with Lou Emoji, and we were doing a podcast and we were like ranking the position groups. And I just remember talking about the safety room and how, gosh, it might have been, I can't even remember what year it was. Might have been like 2016 or 2017, and how the safety room was like number 5, and it wasn't even close to the next 4 ahead of it. And you're just like, and you fast forward to what they've really done over the last, 8-9 years. And there's been some inconsistency at times during this last decade. There's years where they were really good at safety, but just kind of solid at corner, really solid at corner and not at safety. And obviously there was years like 2018 where they were great at both. But now you're getting to an era at Notre Dame where they're just kind of loaded on at both. And they've been able to sustain injuries at both positions, where we saw in 2018 when Julian Love went down that there was such a big drop-off when he went down that three game turned to 17-3 like that in like 3 series with Julian out. To now it's like you lose Benjamin Morrison and you just throw in Leonard Moore and you're fine. You lose Taye Johnson and Jalen Stroman steps into the lineup and has a pick 6 in his first game, blocks a punt, and has 2 tackles for a loss in his first game, filling in for Taye Johnson. And it's just you're kind of like, you lose Xavier Watts and you're thinking, how are they going to replace Xavier Watts? And then Taye Johnson is a freshman All-American. He wasn't Xavier Watts, but like you're now like, okay, but can he be next year? Like, it really is a great era to be following this. And this is the era I grew up on, Trevor. I grew up in an era in the 80s and 90s where Notre Dame was pumping out first-round draft picks in the secondary every year for like a 5-6 year stretch. And, when Bobby Taylor falls round 2, you're like, what? Notre Dame's best DB went round 2? What's going on right now? And they're getting back to that. Now, the question is, can they continue that? But man, it's been fun to watch this rise to where, I mean, Notre Dame's not DBU. You've got to do it for more than a couple years, and you've got to put more than, like 4 or 5 DBs in the NFL. And they still haven't had a first round draft pick since Kyle Hamilton in 2022. But you're getting to the point now where it's like, okay, 3, 4 more years of this, of what you're doing on the field, what we're seeing Notre Dame players do once they get to the NFL. Julian Love's been a Pro Bowler. Kyle Hamilton's been a Pro Bowler. Xavier Watts was, I think, finished second or third in Rookie of the Year voting, Defensive Rookie of the Year voting last year. You're starting to see more and more of that. Lohi Gilman and what he's done. Cam Hart's been a starter when healthy since he got there. You're starting to see them produce more of that in the NFL. And if they can continue down this road, the way they're recruiting and developing, yeah, there's a chance they could be in that conversation in a few years. And never thought that would be something that we'd talk about, honestly, Trev. If you'd go back 5, 6 years ago, don't think we'd be like, hey, could Notre Dame challenge for the status of DBU? They're not there yet. Again, just so we're clear, we're not saying they're there yet. But if they keep doing what they've been doing, they could be in that conversation here sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you're right. It almost makes you feel a little spoiled. I mean, my entire lifetime, Notre Dame never put together stretches like this. So I don't even have anything to go back on of like, this is what it was like when. I can say that, but it's like, this is what it was like when Brian was a young fan.
Yeah, right.
It's never what it was like when I was You had your spurts. You had some of your moments, but a lot of that, Brian,
there's a season here or there, a player here and there, but there weren't the units that we're seeing now. 2018 was the anomaly for most of your life. It's the normal. It's the norm the last few years for Notre Dame. Now we just got to see if they can keep it going.
Yeah, no doubt. And the person that's going to be in charge of keeping that going is Aaron Henry, the defensive backs coach, co-defensive coordinator, defensive pass game coordinator that's stepping in and taking over for Mike Mickens. And when we talk about Aaron Henry, because this isn't new, every position group on defense has a new assistant coach that's in front of the room. So this isn't like Al Washington's back and Max Bull is back and Aaron Henry's a new kid on the block. But when I think about what his role is going to be for Notre Dame this season, I think it's very similar to the conversation that we had with running back, in that you can't ask Aeneas Williams and Kedron Young and Nolan James Jr. to be Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. And I feel very similar. You can't ask Aaron Henry to go be Mike Mickens. You need Aaron Henry to be Aaron Henry. It's about living up to the standard of the room, not to the person that you are succeeding. So that's where I think you have to start with this room. It's absolutely loaded with talent, but the person that's going to be steering the ship is going to be Aaron Henry, and he has to live up to the standard that Mickens laid forth really over the last couple seasons.
There's no doubt. And just real quick, we are going to have a mailbag today, and the mailbag will be whatever you guys want to ask. Obviously, secondary questions will get precedence, but you can ask whatever you want. And look, Trev, when you look at Aaron Henry and you look at what Mike Mickens has done, and really going back to 2020, it really we started to see glimpses of it, where you see Clarence Lewis get thrust into the starting lineup, and Sean Crawford's a 6th-year senior who's been moved all around and deal with injuries. And they kind of get through the year, and they're just this gritty, competitive group that just lacks a lot of top-end talent outside of Kyle Hamilton. You had Clarence Lewis starting. You had Nick McLeod came in as a portal guy, as undrafted free agent. But they were, Clarence Lewis eventually gets beat out at Notre Dame to the degree where he might not even be in the 2 deep, but he was a starter in 2020, and he goes to Syracuse and has a nice final season. These aren't shots at those players. It's just the level of play has been raised so much. And early on, it was done with, honestly, receiver conversions. Cam Hart was the guy that was recruited to play wide receiver at Notre Dame. Xavier Watts was recruited to play wide receiver at Notre Dame. And then slowly but surely, Mike Mickens starts to turn the tide, right? It began with the development on the field, and then goes out in 22 and he gets Benjamin Morrison. 23 goes out and gets Christian Gray and Adon Shuler and guys like that. 24 he goes out and gets Taye Johnson and Leonard Moore in that class. And then 25 obviously continues. And then 26 he gets arguably the best. 25 you get Dallas Golden, who I think was my number 1 ranked defensive recruit in the class. You get Mark Zachary, you get Ethan Long, Jadon Blair, who has since transferred. And then 26, you have Notre Dame's best secondary class in a long time. And arguably the best secondary class in the entire country with 2 5-stars. And so it took time to build, but he got there to where, it's really cruising. And of course, developing on the field was outstanding. And so when you bring in Aaron Henry, to your point, Trev, it's not, okay, go be like Mike Mickens, but it's like, Trev, this is, I think, how you said it to me before the show. And it's like we talked about yesterday with running back. It's not do what Mike Mickens did. It's the standard is an excellence. Recruit at an elite level, develop at an elite level. However you do that, be you, but that's the standard. Excellence is the standard. And that's what, Aaron Henry's going to be held to. And the good news is you're bringing in a guy that we're not fingers crossed, hoping and wishing, and oh man, I really hope Aaron Henry knows how to turn, talented players into NFL players, because his track record at Illinois shows that he does. I mean, he has had a player drafted higher than anyone Mike Mickens has had drafted in the last 5 years, because I think Devin Witherspoon was, I believe, the number 4 or 5 overall pick in the NFL draft, and he was obviously someone that Aaron Henry coached and developed at Illinois. So you like the hire, but now it's like, okay, can you do at Notre Dame what you did at Illinois as a recruiter? I mean, as a developer, and then can you recruit at an elite level, which is what the standard is. There's no more, go find a bunch of projects and hope that they pan out. It's go get the best of the best. Now, the best of the best does not refer to recruiting rankings. The best of the best is you make the evals and you find studs. I don't care what Benjamin Morrison's ranking was. We knew that he was a stud and was going to play as a freshman. I don't care what Leonard Moore's ranking was. We all knew that if he could turn his athleticism and talent into production, he could be an elite player. Some of those guys are ranked high. Some of them aren't. It doesn't matter. It's about finding that elite talent, and that's what he's being tasked with doing. Now, fortunately, for, like I said, for Notre Dame, you do have a coach that's got a track record of success that the players can buy into. So it's going to be easier for that transition that recruits can buy into. And, just early returns, Trev, before we move on to talking cornerbacks, the early returns are, I think Aaron Henry was really wise with how he stepped into the program at Notre Dame. He didn't come in here like, we're going to do it my way. It was giving respect to the guy that had laid that foundation, and then saying, hey, let's keep this thing rolling. Now, I'm going to do it my way because I got to coach how I got to coach. But a lot of the principles that he believes in, how to treat players, building relationships, focusing on technique and fundamentals and competitiveness, a lot of those things are what Mike Mickens did, not because he's trying to be Mike Mickens, but that Mike Mickens and Aaron Henry share similar views on how to develop young men on and off the field. And so I think that it's made for a really super smooth transition.
No doubt about it, especially when you're walking into a room who the majority of the secondary has spent almost its entire playing career under Mike Mickens. Actually, I think everybody in the secondary has spent, talking starters like Christian Gray, Leonard Moore, Adon, Shuler, Taye Johnson, they spent all of their developmental and playing years under Mike Mickens. So you have to be able to approach it in the way that you laid out. It can't be it's my way or the highway. This is how we do things now. The other thing that's going for Aaron Henry is he's not walking into a room that he has to rebuild. Very similar to the situation we talked about with Jaywan Sider walking in South Bend last year. You're being handed the keys to a Ferrari. Now, there are, like getting ready to talk about, there's different levels that everybody has to get to. I don't know if there's another level that Leonard Moore is striving to get to. I'm sure for his personal development there is, but he's coming off of a season where he was a unanimous All-American as a true sophomore and was the consensus #1 returning cornerback in the country in 2025. It's very much the same case in 2026. But Aaron Henry is walking into a room that is just absolutely loaded with talent. And Leonard Moore is where you have to start with that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, look, with Leonard Moore, what's crazy is I do think there's another level he can get to. I mean, don't have a game like Miami. That's a big one. You were pretty good the rest of the year, didn't play well against Miami. I don't think most of the team played very well against Miami. So this isn't like necessarily there was a unique matchup in that game that meant he couldn't perform well. It just nobody played well that game. So don't do that. Stay healthy. He missed 2 games last year. I mean, that it's not something that he did wrong. It just sometimes things happen. But I think those are big aspects of it, Trevor, is I do just that consistency. I think there's a couple little minor things that you improve upon from a technical standpoint that can make him a better player. But at the end of the day, it's just keep doing what you're doing, with the exception of one game, and that's the Miami game. But it's also a great place to start when you have a guy like him. It just makes things a lot easier for you, because you're like, okay, there's at least going to be one stud in this room and I just got to do my job to get the best out of him. But he's already so close to that. It's not exactly like a, man, I don't know how I can get this done. And that also allows you to focus a lot on the guys that are going to be competing. But at the end of the day, Trev, when you walk into a room and you're like, all right, well, I got to build an elite championship caliber defensive secondary. It's a pretty good place to start. 15th is a pretty good place to start.
Yeah, it's definitely an ideal situation to be walking into. He's one of the individual players that leaves outlets like ESPN talking about why they believe Notre Dame has one of the best returning rosters in the country. It's why outlets like FanDuel have Notre Dame as one of the favorites to win the national title this season. But that doesn't mean that the secondary is without question. One of the biggest questions is who starts opposite of Leonard Moore? And then how good will the level of play be? I think we know that Leonard Moore is the constant. We know that that's where this room is starting. If that's where you're starting, that's a heck of a place to begin. But now it's okay. Out of the host of talent alongside him, who is going to line up on the opposite side of the field?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're sitting here, Leonard Moore topic conversation, and we spent like a minute 30 on it. We're like, all right, let's move on. It's kind of like just that state of, well, yeah, okay, he's kind of been that way since he's been in here as long as he's healthy. But I think there's a very real conversation to be had about what's around him. And that's why where we want to spend our time. That's why we kind of move right past Leonard Moore here real quick, because it does matter. Like, okay, great. If Leonard Moore's a stud, but the guys opposite him struggle, then he'll still be a stud. Nobody will throw at him, but Notre Dame secondary won't be that good, or it won't be championship caliber. So obviously that's going to be a big piece of this is who starts opposite him and how well do they perform. And how well they perform is going to have, in my opinion, an even bigger say on how good this secondary is going to be than any desire to like get some improvement from Leonard Moore. Like, we could do a show, and actually I may do something like this over the summer on the film breakdown, where I may show some things like, hey, here's a couple things I think Leonard Moore needs to work on. And we could spend 20, 30 minutes talking about ways he could become an even better player, because every junior in college can be better, but it's like better, like, this kind of better, but if he does make that better and he does become that just dominant player for every single play of every single game of the entire season, that's one guy out of 5. And I've seen great players be part of very bad teams if they're just one. And so how well does that other position perform? And it's going to be a brand new look, because for the last 2 years, the guy opposite him has been Christian Gray. And now Christian Gray is going to be in the slot. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but there's going to be a battle in the fall for who's going to play opposite at Leonard Moore. And the question is, will it be one guy primarily with a rotation? Will it be kind of a matchup thing where some guys match up better against opponents than others? Is it a true rotation every week? That's a big unknown, Trevor. And part of the reason it's an unknown because the first guy that we're going to talk about wasn't here all spring. And the next time we see him put on a gold Notre Dame helmet, I want to make sure we're clear, a gold Notre Dame helmet will be the first time we see him put on a gold Notre Dame helmet. And that's obviously DJ McKinney.
He's one of the top. He's a player at the top of my list, and I'm very excited to see in fall camp for just a host of different reasons. One of them being one that you mentioned is we didn't get to see him during the spring. He's a player that a lot believed to be, and I'm one of those people. So this isn't a shot at, I can't believe you thought this, but he's a player that a lot thought was coming into South Bend to be the starting field corner. And it was looking that way for quite some time because of what he did at Colorado, especially in 2024, lined up alongside Travis Hunter. We're talking about a player who has experience playing in the same defensive backfield as a true star at corner. He did that at Colorado in 24 next to Travis Hunter, and he's going to do that again at Notre Dame in 2026 alongside Leonard Moore. Not saying Leonard Moore is going to go out and win the Heisman.
Well, but Travis Hunter didn't win the Heisman because of what he did at corner alone. He won the Heisman because he was also a 1,000-yard wide receiver. As good as he was at corner, I don't think he was better in 2024 corner in this Heisman year than what Leonard Moore was last year at cornerback, with all due respect. The point that you're making, and I completely agree with Trevor, is you're playing opposite the guy that a lot of people perceive to be the number one cornerback in the country. And so DJ McKinney already comes in knowing what it's like to be the guy that's going to catch all the heat from opposition, because the other side of the field is the perceived best corner in the country. And I think that is important, not because like there's nothing about his game where that matters, but the mindset matters. Having it in your mind to where I've got to really be on top of my game because I know people are coming at me today. And just being ready for that. And then having the short memory to say, hey, look, I don't really care what they do. All right. I'm going to battle. Hey, they beat me on this one. All right, cool. I'm going to come right back next play and go make a play. I think that's a very important thing. And look, I've seen 3 mock drafts for 2027 that have DJ McKinney as a first round pick. Now, I'm not sure that I buy that because I kind of feel like if DJ McKinney was that good of a player, I don't think he's coming back to college for like a 5th year this year. You know, he's probably going to the NFL. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I do think he's got the ability when I watch him on film to be a day 2 draft pick, which is rounds 2 and 3. 24. So when I watch his 24 film, so when let's do it this way. When he committed to, when I heard he was going to commit to Notre Dame, I went and watched his 25 film, and I'm like, he's solid. He's a solid cornerback. You know, like nothing like, oh my gosh, he's going to be an All-American next year. He's a good player. But there were some things you saw from him where I'm like, all right, you know, whatever. It's good, but it's not elite. Then I went back and watched his 24 film. I was like, this is a different dude. Like I had to do, I mean, it wasn't that I didn't know who was, am I watching the right guy? I mean, you could tell who's Travis Hunter and you could tell who's DJ McKinney, but it's like, what happened? Well, so then I make some phone calls to people, you know, that are familiar with the kid. And they're like, yeah, he was dealing with injury all season. Maybe that's the reason he chose to come back because he doesn't have that second year of great film. But you're talking about a guy that's is going into this year. He's been a 3-year starter in the Big 12 because he started for a year in Oklahoma State and then 2 years at Colorado. And so loads of experience, and he's got a lot of good tape. The question with DJ McKinney is going to be, can he make a quick transition into the Notre Dame defense? Can he stay healthy? And ultimately, which guy is he? Is he the 24 version of DJ McKinney or the 23-25 version of DJ McKinney? 23 was his first full year in the rotation, and there was some really good film that year too, just more inconsistent. And then 25, he was good in 25, but he wasn't great in 25. He was really good in 2024. Which version is Notre Dame getting? The good news is the spring, he didn't miss the spring because of an injury. He missed the spring because he was fulfilling some academic responsibilities at Colorado. So how quickly he transitioned the defense is going to play a big role in this. Because you are right, Trevor. They did bring in DJ McKinney to start opposite Leonard Moore. But I don't think it's a given. He's going to have to earn that. And I feel like if he earns that, I'm going to feel a lot better that he's going to look a lot like the 24 version of himself. Because I think he's going to have to look like that to beat out the other guys battling for this position.
Without a doubt, if he goes out and earns it, that's kind of a tip of the cap and a sign of respect because the players that he would have to beat out for this starting field corner position are ridiculously talented. One of them, Dallas Golden, really started to come along this spring. He started some games, 3, I believe, for Notre Dame last year. And you could tell that he was one of the freakier athletes on the back end of the defense, but he was still learning how to be a defensive back. He was just one of the most athletic kids on the team that they put in the secondary. What we saw from him this spring is he's now just developing into a really good defensive back that also is freakishly talented. Talking about a 6 foot, 190-pound kid that they started in the rotation working him around with nickel with Christian Gray and Jaden Sanders. And then as spring went along, we started to see him take more and more reps at that field corner spot. You know, a couple of the practices, Brian, I noticed that you talked about in your post-practice reports about how Dallas Golden kind of spent the majority of his day at field. And then, unfortunately, when we went back up for the Jersey scrimmage and then obviously in the blue gold game, he sat out the rest of the spring with a minor, I think it was like a minor back thing. Mm-hmm. But, you know, very much looking forward to seeing what he does in fall camp. But he is one of the big reasons why DJ McKinney doesn't just walk in and become the field corner at Notre Dame.
Yeah. And now the question for Dallas is like, where's he going to play? Is he going to be a swing guy? Are they going to play him at nickel and at the outside? Or are they going to put him somewhere and say, hey, we're giving you a chance to start? And then if he doesn't start, then you use him at both. I don't know that that's what they're going to do. But I do think that he played well enough this spring to say, hey, we've got to give this guy a shot to earn major minutes. And that's why him missing the last half of the spring was very disappointing, because he was playing at a very high level prior to going down, Trev. But now he's got to get back on track, and he's got to go out there and push to where it go down. Well, I think you kind of said it, Trevor, and I'll state it a little bit differently, but Dallas Golden is going to determine how good Notre Dame's field cornerback position is going to be this year. And so does Mark Zachary to a degree. We'll talk about Mark next, but this is why I feel the way that I feel. If Dallas Golden is the player I think he can be, then he can beat out DJ McKinney at the field position. There's no doubt in my mind. But if Dallas Golden is a player that I think he can be as a sophomore, and he doesn't start, then that tells us that DJ McKinney is playing at the 2024 level of who he can be, and he's playing at his best version, which means Notre Dame's going to be having an elite cornerback tandem. Either one of those things. Now, if Dallas doesn't take a step that I think he's capable of taking, then it's not as given that the cornerback position is going to be strong, because Dallas Golden not at his best means he may not be as good at DJ McKinney at the 25 version of DJ McKinney. And that's where I have a little bit of that concern of, what if neither of them play great? Somebody's going to start, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be really good. That's why I feel like if Dallas Golden plays at a high level, he guarantees that the field cornerback position is going to be very strong, because he'll either be the guy or DJ McKinney will have to play at a very high level to beat him out. And that excites me. I'd still like to see Dallas play, because this is a 15, 16 game season, and DJ McKinney's like a $180 at 6'2", $180, $185. He's a skinny guy. If you can have someone take 15, snaps off of his legs every week, that saves him hundreds of reps at the end of the year, plus practice reps. That maybe keeps him fresher in the playoffs, and where they're going to need him as fresh as he can be. So Dallas Golden's a guy that I have major expectations for as a field cornerback, and then also doing the same thing in nickel if that's where they choose to put him. Because it could be where they just decide, hey, we're going to put Dallas in nickel and let him really develop there. And then that means what I just said about field corner, I say about nickel. Dallas either beats out Christian Gray because he's the best version of himself and Christian doesn't step up, or Dallas is the best version of himself and Christian then still outplays him, which means Christian's going to be a monster as a sophomore. I mean, in his final season in Dallas Golden sophomore year. So that's why I say Dallas is the key to how good this cornerback / nickel position is going to be this year. Him making that step and him being the player I think he can be all but guarantees that Notre Dame's going to be really good in the secondary, at least in the cornerback positions, because either he's starting and playing the way that we think he's capable of playing, or B, he forces a veteran to be really good, which again ensures that we're going to see a really good group of cover players.
Another player that has the potential to, I would argue, make a push into the rotation at field. I don't know if Mark Zachary's at the stage yet where he's going to be able to compete for the starting role between Dallas Golden and DJ McKinney at field corner. But Mark Zachary is another player, depending on how the nickel rotation shakes out with Dallas Golden. Mark Zachary is somebody that could spell at field corner as well. He started at field corner in the blue gold game. I believe he started at field corner in the Jersey scrimmage as well. And he's somebody that started off spring a little bit rough. Some of that was maybe his late transition from missing some of winter workouts because he was with the basketball team to, getting back into the groove of football. But he was somebody that as spring went on, he started to progress. Another young guy in the 2025 class that started a couple of games as a true freshman last year for Notre Dame secondary. And he's somebody that if he continues to grow, he could also make a push to be in that rotation.
I think for Mark, it's literally needs to continue to grow, like literally. Mark's spring started exactly like his 2025 season did. Rough at first. But the more he played, the better he got, the better he got, the better he got, the better he got.
Yep.
And that's really a thing. Here's the thing about Mark. He's still very much learning the position. Mark was dominant in high school because he's a great athlete and is a smart football, just an instinctive, naturally smart football player. But he's very raw technically. And he still was last year. Like the touchdown he gave up against Purdue, he did so many things athletically right there, but he just didn't have that same feel for playing the route and playing the ball that he will by his third year at Notre Dame. In year 3 at Notre Dame, that's an incomplete pass. But what we saw from Mark was his first start really rough. His second start, because I think his first start was the Purdue game, and it was rough. Second game was against Arkansas, and he immediately was better. And then what was the third game he started? I'm trying to remember what his third game he started is, Trev. I'm going to look that up real quick. I had that written down. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. But by his third game and by the end of the year,
did he start at NC State?
Might have been. Yeah,
or Boston College, because I know Boise? Christian Gray.
Boston College.
Boston
That's
College.
What it was Boston College. Thank you for that, Trev. Starts against Boston College, plays 79 snaps, and plays very good football. I mean, first start against Purdue, he gives up 6 according to Pro Football Focus. Against Purdue, he gives up 6 catches for eight targets. It's a 75% completion rate when targeted. Against Texas A&M, he gave up 1 completion on 1 target for 45 yards, and that was that big play down the field where Jalen Stroman was late to come over. So first 2 games of the year, Mark Zachary gives up 7 catches on 9 targets for 138 yards. It's not a good start to the season, right? The rest of the year, he gives up 5 catches on 14 targets and only gives up 62 yards, no touchdowns, and has 2 interceptions or 2 breakups the rest of the year. Doesn't give up another touchdown. Against his second start against Arkansas, gives up 1 completion for 8 yards on 4 targets. Against Boston College, his second start, he gives up 1 completion on 4 targets for 4 yards. Against Boise State, he gives up 1 completion on 2 targets. No completions allowed on 1 target against Pittsburgh. And then Stanford is the next time he gave up a completion, like over the 20-yard completion against Stanford. That was later in the game. But that's a very better and better and better each week. The big thing for Mark now is he's got to really put in a lot of work to get stronger. That's going to be the big key. Is his footwork is improved, his play strength is improved. I mean, his feel for the position is improved, but his play strength is still really not good. And that's why I think he made a very wise decision to not stay with the basketball team all year and get back in the weight room. Because that's the only thing really holding Mark Zachary back. When he gets his play strength to where it needs to be, I think becomes a far more effective player. Because he's a really good athlete. But he isn't the biggest guy. He's not the tallest guy or the biggest guy. What he has working for him, however, from a height standpoint, 5'11" is plenty tall for a cornerback. But he's got very long arms. So he can play bigger than a typical 5'11" guy. It's the strength part. It's the beef part that is a bit of an issue for him that he's going to have to improve upon. And that's going to determine how much of a factor he's going to be in this battle for the starting field position job. It's just going to be how much stronger he can get. But whatever he's starting or not, Mark Zachary's going to play this year, and he's going to be a factor for Notre Dame this year. And he's just got to keep battling and keep competing.
Let's talk about Jaden Sanders, the Michigan transfer. I think he's somewhat of a wild card in the cornerback room because it's kind of falls in line with, he could play field. We saw him start at boundary when Leonard Moore was out for the blue gold game. He's also rotating and taking snaps at nickel. So he's one of those players that Aaron Henry throughout the rest of the offseason is going to have to figure out where to play him. But one thing that we did see from him this spring is he might contribute earlier than what we thought. I was under the impression that, he might rotate in later on in the year or, in mop-up duty throughout games. But I think he showed this year that he can come in and make an immediate contribution to the secondary. To me, the biggest question with Jaden Sanders is just where. Because he's played all 3 that we saw in the spring. One, I'm confident in saying I don't know if he's going to be rotating in much, if at all, in the boundary. But field and nickel is an interesting spot for Jaden Sanders because he's a good player.
Well, yeah, I kind of thought the same thing too, Trev, but who did they put into the boundary when Leonard Moore didn't play in the blue gold game? They put Jaden Sanders there. I don't know that I think he fits best there, and that's where I think we agree. I don't know that he has the foot speed that I desire for the boundary cornerback. But what you saw from this spring is everything you just said, the fact that I don't know if he's a boundary, he's a field, he's a nickel, I don't know if he's But the fact is we saw a kid come in as a true sophomore and a transfer and play 3 different secondary positions and show potential at all 3 of them. Now, you and I believe, and we agree, because I think we're saying the same thing. Your question isn't about, well, we've never seen him play boundary. Your question is, I don't know that he can play boundary at the level he plays the others, so we're on the same page there. But that's more of a discussion. But the fact is he played the position and did some nice things in the blue gold game. You know, it's like having a guy like that can literally play 3 positions is incredibly invaluable. Incredibly invaluable. And he started multiple games for Michigan last year as a true freshman. That's to say, we just talked about 4 players that are fighting for this field position spot. DJ McKinney, Dallas Gold, Mark Zachary, Jaden Sanders. All of them have started multiple college football games. And the 3 freshmen, Golden, Zachary, and Sanders, started at least 2 games last year. Dallas had 3 starts. Mark Zachary had 3 starts. And Jaden Sanders had, I believe, 2 or 3 starts. He definitely had 2. I'm not sure if he had a 3rd at Michigan. You know, he's the guy that's actually got some of the, like, if Mark Zachary if you could put like Mark Zachary's athleticism and instincts and all those things into like Jaden Sanders' body with the size and the strength that he has, like that's one heck of a player. And that's kind of where it's unique. What wins the day in the battle between those 2 guys, if they are battling for the field job? Is it Mark's athleticism and quickness and ability to cover? Or is it Jaden Sanders' size and range and tackling potential? And that's something I want to see. And then I also wonder, will Jaden Sanders get an opportunity in the fall to say, hey, we're going to put you at one spot and let you compete?
Yeah.
Or do they just view him as like, look, he's not our number 1 guy at any spots. His value comes from being able to play all of these things. I'm curious to see, and I'm not saying that's what they will decide. I'm saying that's what I'm curious to see which direction it goes this fall. Is do they see him as Jaden Sanders has earned the right to battle for a starting job? Where is that? Is it the nickel? Is it field? And then let him battle. Or is it like, look, he's not going to beat out this guy or this guy. So we're going to really ride the fact that he's our next man in at multiple spots. And is that his specialty this season? I'm very curious to see the answer to that, Trevor. I really am. But you know, he's another guy that's going to push. And look, I don't know that I don't know that I'd put Adon Pouncey in the conversation as he's going to start or battle to start. But I'll say this. If his growth from day 1 to day 15 in spring practice looks anything, if his growth in the fall looks anything like his growth from day 1 to day 15 in the spring, at some point in time next season, Adon Pouncey is going to be performing in a way where the Notre Dame coaching staff says we might need to get 13 on the field at that field spot. Like, or maybe give him a shot in the boundary, because I thought Adon Pouncey's growth this spring was outstanding. He's a very talented player. We thought he was. He was ranked as a top 100 player on the IB board, but he's more physically ready because he's 170 pounds in high school, and he's still skinny, but he's a lot stronger than I thought he was going to be. Now, he's not strong enough yet. The point, though, is he's further along than I thought he would be, so there's not as much strength room needed, and he's up to 180 pounds, which is exactly how big DJ McKinney was listed at last year at Colorado. So Adon Pouncey could be a factor in this conversation a lot quicker than some of us expected. And it just goes to show how deep this room is. We just went through 5 guys for starting experience, and none of them are Leonard Moore or Christian Gray. That speaks to the depth and the talent that Notre Dame has in this room.
No doubt about it. We talked a lot about the nickel corner position, which I think is probably one of the bigger questions in this secondary. And the question is it settled or not? The first player in this conversation obviously is Christian Gray. Some of the biggest news from Notre Dame's offseason so far has been Christian Gray's transition to field corner to nickel. He was Notre Dame's starting field corner the last 2 seasons. And now he's made the move to get put in the slot. There were some rumblings that was going to happen earlier this offseason, and then Mike Mickens left. And then one question that we had going into spring was, is that going to hold true for Aaron Henry? Mm-hmm. And we very quickly found out that is exactly what. Now, Christian Gray still took reps at field corner. It's not he spent 100% of his time in the slot. But as things are trending, it's looking like he's going to be very much the nickel corner this season.
We saw Christian play some outside in like the red zone part of the game. And I think the first spring practice, we saw him play inside and out. But in the practice periods and in the jersey scrimmage is when we saw him playing in the red zone. playing outside because there was just two corners in the field, and so they put him outside with Leonard Moore. But he was mostly a nickel during the spring. Now, the question is, was that them forcing the issue, trying to say, hey, we need to give him every chance to learn this position, or is it like he's just going to play that position? The difference is if trying to get him to learn the position, if by the end of the spring you make the evaluation, okay, Christian grew enough to leave him there, or he's just not going to be that guy there, then you might see him move back outside, and he might be the starter at the field cornerback position, because I would argue he still might be your most talented guy out there. I saw something the other day where I'm trying to remember who it was, but it was a draft outlet had Christian Gray as one of the top 10 NFL cornerbacks for the NFL draft last year, and a top 100 NFL draft prospect. And so those are things that you look at and say, like, this is a really talented guy. He's going to play somewhere. It's just, what's the staff's confidence in his ability to continue growing and handle that nickel spot the way that he did? And then, like after that is who's next? Who's the next nickel, right? Is it Jaden Sanders, who played a lot of nickel this spring? Is it Dallas Golden? Is it Luke Talich? We saw Luke Talich play some nickel, and I mean, he really only played in the nickel in the spring game. So that's the other thing too, is Christian Gray, did he lock down the spot, or are they going to move him back outside? What's their comfort level? And then who's part of the rotation at nickel? And is it whoever doesn't win the starting job at field, or is it someone that they're just going to be grooming to be Christian's replacement? Rotate with Christian this year, but then he's the replacement for Christian next year when Christian graduates. Is it, three different guys? And three different guys would be more of it's a matchup thing. And so those are all things that we're going to have to learn and figure out here over these next few months.
I'm very intrigued to see what Aaron Henry and Chris Ash do with Dallas Golden and Jaden Sanders in fall camp. Are you going to let one of them just stick in one spot and grow? Or are you going to continue to rotate both and just kind of see who pans out the best where? I think that'll be very interesting. Another thing I'm intrigued to see in fall camp is Corey Adams, because I believe, will he be back in fall camp? Is that?
I believe so, yes. I believe he's going to be cleared this summer. Yeah, it was a cleanup type of procedure from an injury he sustained in high school. So I believe he'll be back. I mean, they purposely had him working out in the winter, knowing this was going to happen, because they felt the weight room work was more important than the on-field work, is kind of my read of what Coach Freeman explained that. And the expectation is that he will be back for the fall and be good to go.
Good deal. He's a player that I'm very much looking forward to seeing in the fall. Brian, I know that was probably your highest rated cornerback.
Oh yeah.
In the 2026 recruiting class, one of the highest ranked recruits in just the 2026 class in general. But when we talk about Corey Adams, one of the questions that we have, and it's one that's such an interesting topic of discussion, because it's who's the heir apparent in the boundary. For the last 2 seasons, it's been, okay, yeah, one side of the field's good to go. Leonard Moore is there. Mm-hmm. But he's not going to be there forever. Unfortunately, I wish he could be. And the guy that we believe to be the heir apparent in the boundary, we didn't get to see in the spring. And so that's kind of what sparks this question around Corey Adams and what all he's going to bring to the table in summer and fall camp.
When you look at Corey, he was my number 2 ranked defensive recruit behind only Joe O'Brien. He was my number 3 overall recruit in the class behind only Joey O'Brien and Ian Premer. And then 3 to 5 was really close. Actually 3 to 6 was really close, because you obviously had Adon Finley and Grayson McHugh, Javian Osborne were all top 75 players in that class for the 4.5-star guys. And then you had the defensive side of the ball. Rodney Dunham was a top 75 player as well. Ebenezer Taye might have the highest ceiling of all the guys that we just talked about. It was a loaded class. And Corey was up in that conversation of who's the best of the group. And, he's got everything you want in the slot, in the nickel, or excuse me, I'm going to eventually get there, right? The boundary. He's tall. I mean, there's a picture that Angelo took from the blue gold game where he's standing next to one of the other corners. I'm actually going to go try and find it. And they're just kind of running from the tunnel to the field. And I'm like, dude, he's even taller than I thought. He's very long. He's fast. He's got good strength. He's got good play strength. He's got as a junior, he was just an elite athlete that was trying to play, he was trying to learn to play football. But as a senior, he was okay, he's an elite cornerback. and you started getting very fired up about what he brought to the table. So, when I look at what he can be, I mean, he's got all the tools that we talk about. Yeah, he's running next to Dallas Golden, who's listed at 6 feet tall, and he's a good inch and a half taller than Dallas Golden in that picture. And so, he's got everything you need to be a star. That's why Notre Dame went so hard after him. He'll need this year. Like, I don't expect him to come in and like be a starter. I think he's going to come in and just get coached up, get stronger, get healthy, learn the position, and then he'll get some playing time and mop up minutes and things like that. And then hopefully next year he'll get his chance to battle for that job, which is exactly what happened with Taye Johnson as a freshman. Taye never did anything but mop up minutes. Taye Johnson didn't play very much as a true freshman. As a matter of fact, Taye Johnson spent most of his freshman year playing corner, and he was hurt, because he missed some time because of an injury. So it's really just about learning the defense, learning what you're doing, learning how to play, taking the coaching, and then when you're getting in some of those mop-up minutes, make the most of it and show that promise. And hopefully he'll never be thrust into a spot where he has to be the guy, which would be resulting in injury. But again, to my point, Taye Johnson as a true freshman played 39 snaps, Trev. That's it. He only played 39 snaps. And Adon Shuler, as a true freshman, only played 52 snaps. And I believe a chunk of those, I'm actually going to look up, I think most of those were in the bowl game against Oregon State. Yeah, he played 21 of his 52 snaps were in the bowl game against Oregon State, 14 against Tennessee State, 10 against Pitt, where they won 58-7. So, I mean, all mop-up minutes. Both went on to be standout starters as redshirt freshmen. So I think how much you play as a freshman doesn't keep you or necessarily determine that you're going to be that guy the next year. So that's why for Kari, this isn't necessarily a he better step up or he's going to get passed up. No, it's just go learn the position, get healthy, get stronger, learn the finer points of the game, do what you need to do in the mop-up minutes you get in, but be ready if your number's called. And then next spring, we're talking about, okay, is Kari going to be the next in line of second-year players that become stars at Notre Dame in the secondary, which we've seen. Leonard Moore was a freshman All-American, but really took his game to another level as a sophomore. Benjamin Morrison really took his game. Now, he played a lot more. Don Shuler, Taye Johnson did not. They did not play anything but mop-up minutes as freshmen and then became standouts and studs in their second seasons. And hopefully Kari will have that opportunity as well. But staying healthy is going to be the big thing for him.
Without a doubt. All-encompassing, Brian, when we talk about the cornerback room, this group has all the potential in the world to be an elite unit, but will it become an elite unit? Yeah. Some of that is going to be dictated by the defensive coordinator and what scheme is put in place, and some of that is going to be by getting some of these questions answered that we just simply don't have the answers to right now. Who steps up at field? Who emerges as the number one at nickel? Will some of the younger talent in the room continue to develop and progress the way that we think that it can? I think all those questions are on the table, but if those get answered, I think this can be a very elite unit.
Yeah. Is it an elite secondary? Is it an elite corner room, or is it a really good corner room because you have an elite one player? That's going to be the question.
Brian, let's switch over and talk about safeties here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And we just got done talking about the cornerback room and the star power that they have in that room, but the safety room, I don't think has a shortage of that either. There's players on the ascension, there's players on the rise, and because of the return of Adon Shuler and Taye Johnson in the defensive backfield, they are in the conversation for the best safety room in college football. But they're not alone in that conversation. There's some others that are in that discussion. But knowing that Notre Dame, you mentioned something at the start of the show, back when you did a show with Loose Emoji, that back in the day, the safety room was not anywhere near close to the conversation of the best position room on Notre Dame's team, let alone being mentioned in one of the best safety rooms in the country. Now we're able to have that conversation.
What's interesting, Trevor, is the safety room is the complete opposite of the cornerback room in that we know they have one stud in the cornerback, but we're not sure about what's next. But what they do have is a lot of talented players. Then, and we didn't even talk about Chaz Smith, who, really grew a lot this spring as well. I mean, Leonard Moore, DJ McKinney, Dallas Gold, Mark Zachary, Jaden Sanders, Aiden Pouncey, Christian Gray, Chaz Smith, Kari Adams. I mean, that's 9 deep at cornerback and at the nickel spot of very talented players. I mean, right now, the 9th out of 9 is Chaz Smith, who was a borderline top 100 recruit coming out of high school and a guy that we liked a lot. That's your 9th out of 9 right now. Gone are the days where Charles Dew is your 7th quarterback or Isaiah Dunn is like in your 3 deep. You know what I mean? Like great kids and all that, but like they should be in your 3 deep. And you go to safety, however, and there's no debate about who the starters are and how good they are. They're very good. If Taye Johnson and Adon Shuler just repeat what they did from A&M to Pitt, and that's when Taye got hurt, just this is one of the best safety rooms in college football if there's not an ounce of improvement from either one of them. But if they show just normal, year 3 for Adon and year 2 for Taye improvement, just normal growth that you have just from experience, it's one of the 2 or 3 best safety rooms in the country, if not number 1. The difference here, however, is after that, there are legitimate questions about the depth. And so that's what we'll get into. But first, let's kind of talk about these veterans, Trev, because this is an important duo. It's an outstanding duo. But when you talk about like who are some of the best safety rooms in the country, Notre Dame, obviously, Alabama's in the conversation. The Oregon's got a shot to have one of those groups. You can't have that conversation without including the Notre Dame duo. And so how do you continue to play that way? Because we have seen before where Notre Dame had a really good safety duo and they weren't quite as good in the second year together as the first. And I would point to 2019 where I just felt like not that Alohi or Jalen Stroman or Jalen Elliott were bad. They weren't bad, but they weren't quite as good as they were in 2018 for a number of reasons. Do they kind of are they just the same? Do they regress a little or do they improve? And for Adon Shuler, it's really just about, just normal steady improvement. But the one thing there's 2 things I want to see from Adon this year. Continue to be a more consistent tackler. Now, Adon definitely got better in that regard in his second year as a starter, Trev. He had 18 missed tackles in 2024, had a miss rate. This is Pro Football Focus number, had a miss rate of 20.9%. He improved that the next year. He had 12 missed tackles this past season, a 17.4% miss rate. So that's improvement, but I need to see a lot better than a 17% miss rate. And there's still too many instances where Adon, will come down out of control and just not be as sound as he needs to be. Taye Johnson, for example, last year had 2 missed tackles. Now, that's a little bit of an unfair comparison because of the way that they use Adon. He's put in more high leverage situations than what you see from Taye Johnson. But the point is I want to see him get his missed tackle rate similar to where Xavier Watts was. And Xavier, his last year was at 12.6. Now, in 23, when Xavier was the Nagurski Award winner and a unanimous All-American, he had a missed tackle rate of 18.8%. And then that next year, and that was his second full year in the rotation, because remember, he played a lot the year before as well. The next year, Xavier dropped his tackle rate from 18.8 to 12.6. So we've seen how year 3 can result in a big improvement in your tackle rate. I want to see that from Adon. If that's the only improvement he makes, that's great. But I do think there's also a level where Adon can get a little bit more effective playing the ball. And that's what I was most excited about from this spring, because we saw Adon Shuler we saw it in the blue gold game, was just one example where they tried to hit that backside seam and Adon came down and laid Mylan Graham out and knocked the ball out of his hands. If he can do those, if he can make strides in those 2 areas, Adon will be one of the best safeties in college football this year. There's no question about it.
Yeah, without a doubt. When somebody's going into their 3rd year in the starting lineup, it's very easy to just say, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. And to a certain degree, there is a lot of that. But for him to take that next step and prevent the 2018 to 2019 safety duo that we were talking about, it's improving those things. And I'm with you. There is a next level for everybody to get to. I mean, there is a next level for Jeremiah Love to get to, going from 24 to 25. And so Adon Shuler is one of those guys. I'm with you.
Trev, we just got done talking about how Xavier Watts went from he was a unanimous All-American and the Nagurski Award winner in 2023. He was a much better player in 2024. Why? Consistency. Just he was able to clean up some of those occasional mistakes in coverage or in the run game, and was able to just be an even more steady player, and he was that much better. Now, he didn't win the same awards, but he was a better football player. And so to your point, yeah, Adon doesn't need to be like, man, I don't know, man. If he doesn't get better, so-and-so is going to beat him out. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, like, look, he was a pretty good football player the last 2 years. It's just you've made those strides. Now just take that next jump and become an even more impactful player. And I think early last year, Adon was putting way too much on himself. I think early last year against like Miami and A&M, you were in a situation where Adon felt like, I've got to go be X. I've got to bring to the defense. I'm a captain. I've got to go do this. I've got to go do that. And I think he put too much on his plate. What he needs to do is like, dude, don't be X. You're not X. You're different players. You don't need to be him. You don't need to be Kyle Hamilton. You don't need to be Harrison Smith. You don't need to be Lloyd Gilman or Jalen Elliott or anybody else. You need to be the best version of you. And that's the thing, is just be the best version of you. You don't got to fill anybody's shoes except your own. And so just clean up that stuff. And like I said, that's what I was encouraged by from the spring. I can't speak to if he improved as a tackler because we didn't see him get a tackle much. But he was more impactful on the football this spring. And that's something that he's got to do, is without getting too aggressive to the ball where you give up some big plays. So I think there's another level for Adon to get to, and there's definitely another level for Taye Johnson to get to, which is really scary when you think about how good he was last season. And I will still don't know that I'll ever get over the fact that Chris Ash and Mike Mickens chose to only play him for 9 snaps against Miami. I don't know that I'm going to get over that.
No, I don't think that I will either. There's nothing that he showed you in the week of practice for Texas A&M in the early bye that's like, okay, yeah, now we'll play him 56 snaps against Texas A&M. I'm with you completely. Taye Johnson is one of the reasons why we believe that this is one of the best safety duos in the entire country. It's because what he showed during his redshirt freshman season. Mm-hmm. Talking about a 6'2", 200-pound, rangy, very instinctive football player, and he did not wait long to make his presence felt. Mm-hmm. He didn't start in the first game, only played 9 snaps. I believe and then from then on, he started the rest of the year until he got hurt, and then he missed the final 2 games of the regular season with a hand injury, and he still finished second on the team in interceptions behind Leonard Moore, which also, sidebar, the fact that Leonard Moore led the team in interceptions last year.
I'll never understand that. Like,
absolutely.
Why is Syracuse and I can understand the Syracuse kid because he was a young kid, and but what is the Stanford quarterback thinking about throwing at Leonard Moore? I will not understand that.
That just blows my mind.
Will not understand that.
Yeah, absolutely blows my mind.
I hope they keep doing it. Please, by all means, keep throwing at him. When you look at Taye, again, there is another level for him to get to. I do think Taye is capable of being even more productive on the football. He had the 4 picks last year, 3 pass breakups. That's 7 total passes defensed. I think there's another level for him to get to. Now, here's the thing about those 7 passes defense. He was only targeted last year 18 times. So in 18 targets, he got his hand on the football 7 times. That's pretty good. The nature of his position, you're not going to get targeted a lot. So we saw the same thing from Xavier Watts at Notre Dame. Xavier was targeted 32 times the previous year in 16 games. So Taye was 18 times in really 9 games. Was Taye targeted in the opening game? Let me just do some quick math here real quick. He was not targeted in the opening game. So let's just go 18. Actually, he's right on path with where Xavier was. So basically, he had 18 targets in 9 games. So if you give him 16 games, he's at 32 targets. And that's exactly how many targets that Xavier Watts gave up. So very, very similar in that regard. Now that the thing is be more effective, because Xavier was about a 5 percentage points better in completion percentage allowed. So he gets to the football. It's just there's still some inconsistency on being where he needed to be. That's the thing where Xavier was as a 5th-year senior. He just was always where he needed to be. And even to a degree in 23, he was that way as a senior. Again, Taye was a redshirt freshman who spent most of his freshman year playing corner. So, you'll understand why he didn't look like a grizzled vet from an assignment standpoint all year, but he was able to make up for a lot of it because he just is such a rangy, talented football player. What we saw from him this spring was more consistency. And then he was still able to make a lot of plays because his range is elite. I mean, he's an exceptionally rangy player. He's a tougher player than I thought he was going to be this early. Like, if you watch Taye play in high school, you did not question his toughness. But one of the things that can be harder for younger players who maybe were both sides of the ball, and he played quarterback as a senior as well, is do they truly understand the level of physicality needed to perform at this level? Even if there's a willingness, you don't quite understand it. And we didn't see that issue from Taye last year. But now if he's in position a little bit more and he's more consistent, there's times I could point to film. There's a lot of, Taye blew that coverage. He's got to see that. And I think it was him on the play that everybody's like, oh, that's Drake Bowen giving up the backside seat. No, that was the safety. There were too many snaps like that from Taye, which you expect and are okay, not okay with. You live with when you're a redshirt freshman who hasn't played a lot of football. And then as the year went on, he got better and better and better. And now you look at Taye and you're saying if he just makes normal year 1 to year 2 strides, he's going to be a star this year. Because what was crazy is, as I mentioned, Xavier Watts as the field safety had a 12.6% missed tackle rate in 2024. He had 13 missed tackles in 16 games. Taye Johnson last year, according to Pro Football Focus, had 2 missed tackles all year. It's a 3.8% missed tackle rate. He's a very sound tackler. And that goes back to what I said with the physicality. But the difference is Taye doesn't go looking for the knockout blow. Adon does. And that's where Adon's got to understand, when do you put your head on the football like you did against Georgia, and when do you just wrap a guy up? And that's something he'll learn. But that's a scary thing, is there's a lot of room for improvement in Taye Johnson's game, which is a really scary thing to say, because this isn't meant to let's talk down how good he was as a redshirt freshman. No, he was a dude for this defense last year. But the point is he's not even close to his full potential as a player. And really that just comes down to more seasoning, being in the right spot more often. And when I mean right spot, not like, ooh, he was in the right spot for the pick. I just mean literally that's your job. Do it. Go do it. There were too many of those snaps. Now that he's in year 2 as a starter, we expect those things to be ironed out, because you know who we used to say that about? This is exact same conversation we had about Xavier Watts after 2022. There were times where I remember thinking of it right now. There was the Stanford game where Xavier read the go route just a second late, got off the hash just a second late, and he breaks the pass up. And then another time he doesn't react fast enough, and was it Ben Yurchek? Is that you say his name? The tight end they had a couple years ago was a good player.
Oh, Hunter Yurachek?
No, that's the guy from Arkansas, isn't it? Hold on a second. It's going to bother me. I don't know why sometimes I forget this. The tight end Stanford had 2 years ago let's go to Stanford's stats. But he's a really good player. He transferred, I think, to Georgia this past couple years. But let me see here real quick. Benjamin Urasek. Okay. He transfer to Georgia in 2024, but he had that play where he catches that dig route and Xavier's late to respond to it. He catches it and goes for a long touchdown. That was back in 2022. Like those kind of things that we saw from Xavier in 2022 are what we saw from Taye last year. That was his first year in the lineup, first year in the rotation. And then the next year, Xavier keeps putting in the work. He's instinctive, he's smart, all that. He's getting more comfortable being just a defensive player. And boom, he becomes the Nagurski Award winner and a star in 2023. I think Taye has a chance to go. Is it Bryante? Isn't that what he wants to go by now? So. He has a chance to become that type of impact All-American player. He really does. And just another example of a guy that was woefully underranked by the recruiting services coming out of high school. He was a top 100 player for us. The tools were there. Got a chance to see him at Irish Invasion. But your boys at On3 had him as a 3-star recruit. Only Rivals had him in the top 100. ESPN had him number 277. 247 had him number 209. On3 had him as a 3-star. So you guys point to stars matter. Well, Notre Dame's going to have 3 All-Americans at safety in the last 3 years. All of them were 3-star recruits coming out of high school by at least one service. So I just think we should remember that. Actually, by On3 had all of them except for Xavier Watts, who they didn't have ranked at all because they weren't doing it then, but everyone else had him as a 3-star, and I'm pretty sure they would have as well. But I just had to get that little shot in there. But Taye and Adon have a shot to be the best safety duo in the country, but they both have to continue proving. If they don't, it's a top 5 unit. If they do, it will be the best safety tandem in all of college football. With all due respect to Alabama, Oregon, teams like that. it will be if they both just make steady improvement this year.
Yeah, we see that very much the same. If they continue to make good, steady improvement, I think this is the best safety duo in the country. And you could argue that it might not be overly close.
And that's saying something when you consider how good some of these safety rooms are coming back in college football.
Yes.
Keon Sabb and what's that other kid's name? Bray Hubbard, Coy Parrish, and at safety,
Flowers.
And then, Aaron Flowers. That's a really good group. If Terry Moore can be healthy, I think Ohio State's got a shot to have a really good safety duo as well. It just depends on his health. But playing with go ahead.
If they use him the right way, LSU could also have a pretty good safety duo.
Ty Benefield,
Marcus Cooley and Ty Benefield. Yeah.
Agree. There's some really good safety. Oklahoma should have a very good safety tandem this year. There's some really good safety rooms. Georgia should have a very good safety room this year. There's a lot of really good safety rooms in college football. So when we say what we're saying, we're not trying to give you a big homer take. We're telling you this is kind of how it is, and that's saying something when you consider how many good safety tandems are coming back in college football this season. And not just transfers, but rooms where it's like the starters and guys are coming back. Some of them are transfers, obviously. But there's also some rooms where it's like they got their two. Alabama's two guys are both returners. So it has a chance to be outstanding. It really does.
No doubt about it.
Question, Trev, is what's behind it. I like what's immediately behind it, but it falls off a cliff real quick. And that's a bit of concern. More of a future concern than it is a 2026 concern, but it's still at least something to discuss. But for 2026, I love the safety depth chart. It's beyond 2026, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is more of the concern.
Yeah, absolutely. The depth in the room is the thing in question. And I'm with you. I don't know if overly they're going to need it because they have a strong three-man rotation coming back when you factor in Luke Talich into this room. But, man, we talk all the time. Like Notre Dame is the favorite on FanDuel. They're actually, I just looked, they are now the favorites on FanDuel. They have the highest odds to make the quarterfinals and the semifinals, the second highest odds to make the national championship game, and the second highest odds behind Ohio State to win the national championship game. If they want that to happen, as high as I am on Adon, Shuler, and Taye Johnson, I also don't love the idea in the regular season them playing 600 snaps. You need your depth, especially with some of the earlier competition that they're going to face, to be able to step up and be ready to play in those moments. Not saying that they're ever going to rest their starters because they're playing Rice. It's never a conversation around that, but they do need their depth. One of that, and where we start with this conversation, is Luke Talich. Is he going to be moving around a little bit more? Is he going to remain on the back end? He's kind of the wild card in the safety room because you can do a lot of different things with him.
Yeah. The reason I'm hesitating, Trevor, is because it's kind of like there's a bit of an uncertainty about where exactly they're going to play him this year. And that's did what we see in late in the spring, was that a reaction to like guys being out and they just needed to play him there? Is it something where they're like, hey, we need to get this guy closer to the football? Because, I mean, what was it that Steyer said at that one practice?
He was like, the ball always seems to find Luke Talich.
Yeah, that's right. And I was like, no, Luke Talich always seems to find the ball. And I was being smarty pants because I knew what Steyer's meant. That's what he's saying. He's like, well, that's what I meant. I know, I'm just busting your chops. But the fact is Luke Talich just kind of has a knack for getting to the football on special teams, on defense, so I understand the desire to say, should we be getting him closer to the football? I kind of get that. But at the same time, with Joey O'Brien going down in the spring and the uncertainty about his future, can you do that as much with Luke? So I think that's where there's an interesting conversation, Trevor. But this kid's got one of the best stories there is. Walk on from Wyoming, starter. He'll be a 4-year starter on special teams, and a guy that you look at now and say, what can't he do in the secondary? But in a year where 16 games is what's going to 15, 16 games going to get you a title, who knows about injuries? Luke Talich is one guy going down or one guy struggling away from having to be the guy. But his presence also, if they're able to use him on the back end, rotating him in can also be something that helps keep Taye and Adon fresh to where you don't have to rely on him as much. So he's an incredibly important part of this defense this year. I don't know that they can be an elite defense if Luke Talich isn't playing his best football in 2026.
Without a doubt. And we've seen that with other rotational safeties at Notre Dame's defense going back to 2024. Rod Hurd played a big role in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia. And then you go back to last year, Jalen Stroman had one of the best single game performances a Notre Dame safety has had ever. Blocked punt, pick six for a touchdown, 2 tackles for a loss. And then I think the second quarter started. You know what I mean? So the rotational safety at Notre Dame has always had some level of impact. The biggest question is what is Luke Talich is going to be? And I'm with you. I'm interested to see what Aaron Henry and Chris Ash decide to do. Do they take the route of if it ain't broke, don't fix it? You kind of keep them in that rotational role. You keep them on the back end of the defense. Sometimes in a bigger dime look, you have 3 safeties on the field and you put Luke Talich in kind of as that middle field rover. Or do you start experimenting and you move him down to the nickel? I'll be very curious to see, but I'm with you. Notre Dame is going to need Luke Talich.
Or D, all of the above.
Right.
That's the other thing is, and I think that might be where they're going. Like, look, Luke can play field, he can play boundary, he can play that nickel. Like, we're just going to have packages where Luke's on the field. And maybe it's sort of a big nickel package that they put him in the game. Maybe it's a dime package. They put him down there near the box. But I think you're going to end up needing Luke all over this season.
Without a doubt.
Look, like Ethan Long, we'll talk about him in a second. But especially with Joey O'Brien and the uncertainty of when he'll be back because of the injury, I mean, you're going to need Luke Talich to play on the back end of the defense. But I also understand the desire to say, but he really is good at finding the ball. Let's get him down there as well. But he's at the point in his career where I don't think you have to limit him to one spot. You know, even if that one spot is just back end safety where he's playing both field and boundary. I just mean one spot at all where, like, dude, get him down near the box. I understand that. Have him play boundary, have him play field, but just this kid needs to play. And that's and there's some looks where you could end up putting Taye in the slot and let him and let him cover. You know, this is a kid that you thought enough of to play cornerback in 2024 when you were having some injury issues on the depth chart there. You know, there's some looks where maybe you have Taye and Luke on the back end, and because you want to play more cover too, and you have Adon playing in that big nickel type of role. So there's a lot of different things that they can do because of the length and the range of the safeties, and just because of the fact of Luke Talich has starter talent. He just happens to be at Notre Dame at a time when they have maybe their best starting duo at safety in quite some time. A chance, because right now it's not as good as the duo they had in 24, but it has a chance to be better than that. Neither guy has to even be as good as Taye, but it's like if Taye's anywhere close to what Xavier was and Adon's a much better version of himself from 2 years ago, then that's where they get better, without either one of them needing to be as good as Xavier Watts was in 2024. But let me ask you this, Trev. Would it shock you if Taye Johnson had a Xavier Watts type of season this year?
No, not in the slightest. I mean, he had a kind of a quasi Xavier Watts 2023 season last year, and he was hurt for the final 2 games and didn't even start the first game. Played 9 snaps in it. So, no, that wouldn't shock me at all. It wouldn't shock me in the slightest. Let's talk about Ethan Long, because he is a very interesting person to talk about on the back end of this defense. The last 2 years, Notre Dame has played kind of a 4-man safety rotation. It was a little bit more prevalent last year with Luke Talich being a junior, with Jalen Stroman coming over as a transfer who had more experience, and then obviously you had Adon and Taye. We saw a little bit of that in 2024, with Rod Hurd rotating in, and Luke Talich would see some meaningful minutes at safety as well. So Notre Dame is in a need for a safety to step up to be a 4th potential option if that's what they elect to do this year. And Ethan Long, he started out spring a little bit rough. He took a jump, not as big of the one that we wanted to see from him, but I thought he was a player that needed to end spring on a good high note, and I think he did that in the Blue Gold game.
No, there's no doubt. Look, when I look at Ethan Long, Trev, here's the reality. Notre Dame doesn't need a 4th safety. With Luke Talich and everything we just talked about him, he can play both, and they can go with a 3-man safety, which is, like, to your point, this is what you're pointing out. That's what they mostly did in 2024. Now, Luke would occasionally play safety, but it was occasionally. It was primarily the 2 starters, Xavier Watts, Adon Shuler, and Rod Hurd. And then Rod would do a little bit of both. So they could do that. Ethan's going to have to earn and force his way into that rotation spot in the fall, especially if Joey O'Brien's down. He struggled, I thought, in the Jersey scrimmage. Had the bad angle of the football, gave up the long touchdown pass to Devin Fitzgerald. But the thing about Ethan is he's a playmaker. It's just consistency is his issue. Taking the proper angles to the football, being in the right position, wrapping up in the run game, all things that you'd expect a true freshman to really be struggling with. And technically, he's still in his freshman season. But we also saw last year against Syracuse, and we saw in the Blue Gold game, that this is a kid that can, when he's doing it right, can be around the football a decent amount and has the chance to be a playmaker. And so the Notre Dame GM and the D coordinator thought enough of Ethan Long that they were willing to give him a pay raise while telling Jadon Blair to take a walk. Now, I would say that was probably a bad idea and has nothing to do with Ethan Long, but because Jadon Blair can play, and from what I'm hearing, he's got a shot to start at Missouri this year. You couldn't use him in your 2 deep at all. We wouldn't be having the conversation about what's the future look like at safety if they hadn't done that. But let me not go off on a tangent there. But my point is, they thought enough of Ethan and what he showed as a freshman and the growth he showed to feel that way. I think I was expecting a little bit more of a jump from him this spring. Didn't see it. And I think Ethan was trying to press. That's what it looked like to me. Like he was trying to make the big play all the time. When it's like, dude, no, just drive on the ball and break it up. Or just beat that guy to the spot where the quarterback doesn't throw it. You don't always have to look for that big pick six type of play. Do the little things well. And I think that's the thing that Ethan's going to have to prove. He's going to have to continue to get stronger, physically stronger, like a lot of freshmen do. But the big thing is just the consistency. Because here's the deal. If you're a playmaker at safety, but 25% of the time you're in the wrong spot, I can't put you on the field. Because in those 25% of the time, you're going to give up a couple really big plays. We saw that from Taye last year. But Ethan's not Taye. And so I don't know that you're going to be able to get away with that the way that you need to. And you kind of had to play Taye last year early because you were struggling at the position. So we saw that when safety's not where he needs to be, that's going to result in big plays. And so for Ethan, it's really just about do the little things well and then let the big plays come to you more. He was clearly big play hunting against Syracuse. He was looking for that big pick. And I understand that when you're playing a bad team, that can be a tendency. Like I've said this before, the game I scored 5 touchdowns in high school. The last one was a pick 6. And I was baiting that quarterback all game. I was hunting for because we were killing them. So it's like you get a little bit out of what you're supposed to do, and you start kind of big play hunting, and that's when you give up big plays. And I think that's what we see from Ethan this spring is like, dude, stop trying to make the big play. Do your job and let the big plays come to you. A lot of Taye's big plays last year were Taye being a really rangy athlete and doing what the defense calls you to do, and then your athleticism takes over and you go make the play that's presented to you. And Ethan has to learn that. And when he learns that, he's going to be a good player for Notre Dame. I believe he can be a good player at Notre Dame. He just has to relax, let the game come to him more instead of hunting big plays. Because when you hunt big plays, you're going to give up big plays. And that's going to be the difference in Ethan being your number 2 on the depth chart at a position, but not necessarily a guy that you're going to be playing a lot. And then Ethan forcing his way into the rotation this year. It's that right there.
No question about it, man. I'm with you. Let's talk about Joey O'Brien. Obviously, one of the most heralded recruits in the 2026 class, one of the highest rated kids in the overall class. He's going to be a future star. The question with him is just when, not if. But the question right now is about his health status. We just don't know how long he's going to be out. I think he did post a video. A video came out of him doing like some workout with like a medicine ball, but he was like in a big cast, but he was still working out. Yeah.
Yeah. And Notre Dame hasn't said what it is. I've seen 3 different reports with 3 different injuries and 3 different times out. That's why we don't really talk on injuries. We don't know. But the one thing I can say is that I was told that they expect him back at some point in time this season. I did not get any clarification beyond that. I don't know if that means by fall camp. I don't know if that means by September. I don't know if that means by October. I have no idea. And then the question is, well, how much workout time is he going to miss to improve his game? But the reality is he had already passed up Ethan Long. And we saw it in the Jersey scrimmage, and we saw it in the Blue Gold game. He had already passed up Ethan Long. And that's not even a knock on Ethan Long. That's just how good Joey O'Brien is. He was the number 1 ranked recruit in the class last year for Notre Dame, and he's a special talent. So you want to get him back. The good news is for Notre Dame is you're going to have a long season. You think it's going to be a 15, 16 game season. You hope. If he misses the first month, he misses the first month. You work him back in. You get him back ready for the end of the year, and then he can help you in the postseason. That's really the key. You've got to get Ethan Long back by the BYU game to start working him in the rotation. Not Ethan Long, Joey O'Brien, to start working him in the rotation. So that way, hopefully in November, he can kind of get some opportunities to play. And then by the time he gets to the postseason, he's comfortable with what he's supposed to do. Now, if he's back sooner than that, that's great. But you don't have to force him back. The presence of Luke Couch and Ethan Long means you don't have to rush him back. But if you can get him back, the sooner you get him back, the better. Because what we saw this spring, Trev, is Joey O'Brien's is every bit the player we hoped he would be coming out of high school as a 5-star recruit.
Yeah, fact of the matter is I'm with you. I don't think Notre Dame looks to have a 4-man safety rotation, but they will play 4 if, that spot is earned. We saw that in 2025. Joey O'Brien is one of the players that could force their hand to have a 4-man rotation. Yep. Not that I don't think Ethan Long is. I just don't think Ethan Long is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Joey O'Brien could absolutely be that guy. I'm with you completely, and he's going to be a star. Biggest question is just when, not if. I'm with you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So then we kind of get down to the conversation, Trevor, as you look at the safety room and you start talking about it. Say, okay, this room, I don't feel that we have the same questions of how good can it be with the range at cornerback. The question I think we have here is, like, what would we say at cornerback? Is this going to be a good group with an elite player, or is it going to be an elite group with an elite player? I think with this, it's like I'm confident the safeties are going to be elite this year. I think the only question mark I have is, are they the 5th, 6th best safety group in the country, or are they the number 1 or somewhere in between? And I think that's where the proven experience at Notre Dame comes into play. The only question is, okay, if there is an injury, that's when you start to wonder, how good they're going to be. But I'm very confident that this group is going to be outstanding this year. Just got to keep everybody healthy. That's the big thing, because you're an injury away from your depth chart being real shaky. Because right now you already have an injury, so you're one more away from this being a real shaky depth chart for Notre Dame. But I have no doubt that this group is going to be outstanding. I really don't. Here's the question, Trev. Let me ask you this: if Taye Johnson and Breontae Johnson and Adon Shuler make the improvements and play the way we think they're going to play this year, which safety room do you think is better, 24 or 26? It's a tough one.
I'm going to say 26 because I'm not ready to crown Taye Johnson, Breontae Johnson better than what Xavier Watts is going to be in 24 because I think that's an unfair standard. At the best, let's call it a wash, because I don't know if I'm going to call any safety for a very long time better than what we saw from Xavier Watts in 24.
You got to be really flipping good to be better than what Xavier Watts was in
100%. Now, where I see the biggest difference being made up is Adon Shuler's evolution from being the 24 version of himself to the 26 version of himself. He was very, very good in 2024. And I hesitate to use the term flashy because that makes it sound like when he wasn't on, he was bad. And Adon Shuler was never bad in 2024. But I think the level of consistency combined with the fact that he's going to be a returning captain and going into his 3rd year as a starter, him in 2026 will be significantly better than the really good player he was in 2024. So for those reasons, I think 26 could be better for those reasons.
Here's the other thing, too. I think your duo, because if he's, Xavier's here and Taye is here, Breontae is here, I think the gap between Adon Shuler in 2024 and Adon Shuler in 2026 could be greater than the gap between Breontae Johnson and Xavier Watts, or other way around, Xavier Watts and Breontae Johnson. Here's the other reason. As much as I loved what Rod Hurd brought to the table in 2024, I think the rotation will be deeper and better this year than it was then. And that's especially true if Joey O'Brien is able to come back healthy. I think that's the difference. I feel a lot better about. I don't think there's a drop off if one of them goes down, but you're still going to be really good there. And if you lose a guy, if you don't, you've got 3 starting caliber players right now, and then a freshman who looks every bit the 5-star we hoped he would be. And oh, by the way, there's 6'3" Ethan Long, who is also another kid that's around the football a lot, that's still growing and developing. So I think the depth is where I would get to. It's got a chance to be. It's got a chance to be as good as that was. And then it's like, okay, well, how does it stack up against other units? Like, I would say right now, I absolutely think that they're going to be better than the 2018 duo, which was outstanding. And that's the next best group. I think last year, by the 3rd game, they were as good as that duo in 2018. Is that fair? And so I think this safety group has got a chance to be outstanding. The question is just how much so. Good health is going to be key at that position, because that was a big knock on Taye Johnson in high school. He was hurt. He showed up at Notre Dame hurt, and then obviously got hurt last year. Fortunately, it was different things. He had a shoulder. Last year was just a freaky hand thing. I don't know that I'd call him injury prone yet, but it's just, you're young. You got to prove that you've been banged up and missed time in each of your first 2 years. The first year it was coming back from an injury he sustained in high school and the surgery that came from it. Last year was obviously something that happened later. So that's really the only thing that can derail this group to me is just health.
Brian, let's talk about the future of the Notre Dame secondary up next year in the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And we talked about the current state of the roster, how good we feel about the corners, how good we feel about the safeties, the questions that both of those position groups have. Now it's time to pivot and talk about looking ahead. And one thing that we can say for certain is Notre Dame is loaded up with secondary recruiting, but that's something that has to continue. That's when you enter in the Aaron Henry effect, and Mike Mickens is no longer in town. Now, is Notre Dame at the level where it can, similar to offensive line, it can sustain success on the recruiting trail because of the logo that you have going into some of these recruiting meetings versus the individual person? I think you're going to need a blend of both, but this, no doubt about it, the secondary recruiting has been absolutely humming the last couple seasons.
No doubt. And Mike Mickens did just really a tremendous job of building up this depth chart. You know, you look at all the guys in the depth chart right now. I mean, Mike Mickens was responsible for all of them. And, he obviously didn't leave until after signing day and was also involved in getting the transfers here. Like, he literally put this room together. And here's the problem, though, with the way that Notre Dame is recruiting. You're not recruiting a lot of 4-year players. You're not recruiting a lot of Xavier Watts 5-year players. You're recruiting a lot of guys that you're going to get 3 years out of, which means you're turning it over a lot more often. So your windows of this dominance can quickly fade if you're not restocking with comparable players. And so when you look at the secondary, there's a chance that Leonard Moore and Taye Johnson are both gone after this year. True juniors. In eligibility wise, Taye is only a sophomore. Leonard's, but they're juniors in college. Well, Trev, we've seen, like, from reputable people, we're seeing both of them projected into the first round of next year's draft. It's actually more of a surprise when you don't see Taye in next year and for mock rounds for next year. So that means you can't afford to go a couple years in between great classes like they used to do all the time. You'd have that really good class of 2016, and then you have 17. You don't even sign guys at certain positions. I think it was it 2017 or no 2017? I think it's either 27 or 2019. There was a couple years in there where, like, they didn't either sign a corner or they didn't sign a safety coming out of high school. 2019, they didn't sign I think a corner. They ended up moving a couple receivers over the corner. I think it was 2019. So it was frustrating to see that, and you can't afford to go back to that. You have to continue to stock up. Now, the good news is Mike Mickens left Aaron Henry and the Notre Dame staff with back-to-back outstanding classes. The 25 class had Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, Ethan Long. Unfortunately, you chased off one of those really good players from the 2025 class. Then the 26 class brings in 5 studs. or 4 studs and one guy in Nick Reddish that was really surprisingly good early on in spring practice before he got injured. But you do have a great foundation to build upon. But again, the 28 class that Notre Dame is currently recruiting, when they arrive, we could be looking at them going into the final year of Kari Adams and Joey O'Brien. I mean, or even Adon. You know what I mean? That's the thing that you look at is a lot of the guys that are on the team now won't be on the team when the 27 class shows up, possibly. I mean, think about that. Just when the current group of recruits shows up, you're not going to have Christian Gray. You're not going to have DJ McKinney. You probably won't have Leonard Moore. And there's a good chance you won't have Adon, Shuler, or Taye Johnson either. You won't have Luke Talich. So, there's a lot of turnover the next couple of years. You can't only rely on the 26 class and 25 class to fuel that. So, it's going to be really important. And even last year's class, as good as it was a safety short. Now, they put that class together thinking, in my opinion, thinking you're going to have, at least the secondary coach thought you were going to have Ethan Long and Jadon Blair at safety still. Well, once Jadon transferred and you only signed one safety in the 2026 class, now you're in a situation where you still have 2 safeties from the 25 class, but one of them is currently starting on the baseball team as a freshman. We have no idea what he's going to be able to do as a football player, or if he even continues as a football player. I think he will, referring to Brandon Logan. I think he will, but we haven't seen him play at Notre Dame as a football player. We've seen him only play as a baseball player. I don't know what to expect from him. He's very athletic, but what will he be? I don't know. So you have one true football player in the 25 class at safety, and then a baseball player. And then you only have one true safety in the 26 class. So even as good as it's been, there's a need for Aaron Henry and this staff to make a very immediate splash when it comes to recruiting, and not just at corner, where you inherited 2 really talented players from Mike Mickens.
And another player that could have played safety if needed is Cree Thomas, who also transferred.
That's right.
That's the hole that they're in right now, unfortunately. Now, we were also talking about, yes, it's the holes. You lose Jadon Blair. We don't know about Brandon Logan yet. You lose Cree Thomas. And the state of the roster is still what it is. But the point of this is it has to maintain that way. Notre Dame doesn't want to be in a spot where it's like, I don't want to be in a spot as a fan and as an analyst with the job that I have now, being like, oh, man, remember that 26 secondary? If only we could get back to those days. Mm-hmm. Man, remember the 24 secondary? If we could get back to those days. Train has to keep rolling. And I'm with you completely. And where that starts is with that 26 class, because there's a really, really great chance that the trend of solid cornerback play continues because of the elite recruits you brought in 2026.
Yeah. So here's kind of the interesting thing, Trev, when you look at recruiting under Aaron Henry. I don't know that we're going to have a good sense of what that is in year one. It's really going to come down to the 28 class, but I do think how you finish off this 27 class is going to be important. And I think he's immediately being faced with a challenge. Let's get into the 27 recruiting right now, Trev. 27 recruiting, obviously, when Aaron Henry was hired, your cornerback class was set. You have Zay Hassan and Ace Alston. Ace Alston can play outside or nickel. Xavier Hassan is, to me, a pure outside corner that can also play nickel and safety because he's just that good. He's kind of like Dallas Gold. But, Zay Hassan is a top 50 football player. And it's not just on the Irish Breakdown rankings, which we have him as a top 50 foot player, but that's also true for national recruiting. I mean, I know at least one of the services, I think On 3, I'm going to pull this up right now. I think On 3 has him as a number 33 overall player in the country. Yeah, they have him number 33 overall player in the country. He's number 47 on their composite list. ESPN has him at 55. 247 has him at number 60. But when you look at Zay Hassan, as much as I love his game, there was really one question that I had about him as a player, and that was, does he have like the elite speed, like that elite top-end speed that you hope for, or is he more of a Benjamin Morrison? Now, being a Benjamin Morrison is great. Benjamin Morrison was a heck of a player, and that's who Zay reminded me a lot of, was Benjamin Morrison. But now we've seen him go out there this spring, and his track times have shown significant improvements this spring, and so now he's running in the 10.5 range, which if you're adding a guy that we already thought was a top 50 player even before he starts going out there and putting up big track times. Now you really start getting excited that he's now showing off sort of that speed. And so I think he was like in the 10.7 range in high school, or like as a sophomore. Now he's in the 10.5, 10.6 range consistently. You've got a chance to come in and have a guy that can come in and be an impact player right away. Now, why does that matter? Well, there are some corners in the 26 class that I think could play safety. Adon Pouncey could play safety. I think Jaden Sanders could play safety. And, I think if Zay Hassan is as good as we hope he is, if he's here next spring, you'll be like, okay, he's shown himself. We're comfortable moving one of these corners to safety now, if Adon and Brayante are gone. So I think that's why keep loading up at corner, because really talented corners can also result in being really talented safeties in a defense that likes to coverage is important. So I think there's this bad perception that, well, if a guy's not athletic to play corner, he's moving to safety. You don't want to move guys who aren't athletic enough to play corner to safety. Like, that's not the goal. You want guys that are good enough to play safety but have the body to play corner, and that's something that Notre Dame has recruited recently. And, I don't know that I would want to have Aiden Pouncey playing safety today at $180, but give him a year in the Lauren Landau system, and maybe he is. Maybe he becomes the next Taye Johnson as that converted corner, because Taye was recruited to play safety, but he was a corner in high school a lot. He played all over. But he has the athleticism to play corner, which is why Notre Dame moved him to corner as a freshman when they had some injuries. And thought about there was talk of leaving him there initially. That's how good he looked as a freshman at corner, and they wisely made the decision to move him to safety. But he's got those corner movements. That's what you want. And so I think that's something to consider. I mean, and Zay Hassan could play safety as well. I don't want him to play safety, but he could. He could be. Imagine if Adon Shuler was could also play corner and run a 10.5. Like, that's a similar body type to what I think Zay Hassan has. So that is helpful. So sometimes being still recruiting great at corner can help you be okay at safety, and that's something to consider too. And that's why this 27 class with Zay Hassan, who's an elite player, and a guy like Ace Austin who can play both outside and the slot, is important.
Is it kind of like, I could be way off the mark here, is it kind of like along the offensive line, you could recruit a tackle to play guard, but you don't really recruit a guard to play tackle, in that, like, you wouldn't recruit a safety to play corner, but you could recruit a corner that could transition to safety? Is that
to a degree? Not to a degree. There's some of that. There's more safeties who can't play corner than corners who can't play safety. So it is similar in that regard. Like, love Jadon Blair as a safety. Love Ethan Long as a safety. I'm not moving either one of them to corner. Joey O'Brien maybe could have played corner, and he did play corner most of his career, and then he just kind of outgrew it. He got to be 6'5", and so they moved him to safety. So I think you see that transition more than the other way around. And the exceptions to the rule tend to be guys who did everything in high school. Like Taye did everything. He was quarterback, safety, corner, receiver, wherever you needed Taye to be, he was going to play. But yeah, you see more corners that can go to safety in college than the other way around. But that also partly depends on scheme, because if you're going to move to a pure cover 2 scheme, then all of a sudden there are some safeties that can go be good corners for you.
Sure.
And so I think that factors in as well. That's like Julian Love was a really good corner in college because they were a zone defense. I don't know that you'd play Julian at corner for Al Golden. I think you would have moved him to safety, and he'd have looked a lot like Xavier Watts, honestly, as a safety in college. So part of it depends on the system you want to run. For Notre Dame, you'll see more corners go to safety than the other way around, in my opinion. But so I think that's where it can help, especially some of these longer guys like an Aiden Pouncey, a Jaden Sanders, Dallas Golden could play safety.
Yeah,
in my opinion. Like, that's one of the things we raved about him in high school was Dallas can play safety, he can play nickel, he can play corner, he can play freaking running back, he can play slot receiver. Yeah. Like, Dallas Golden can do anything. It's just about what can we do? Where can we put Dallas to get him on the field? And sometimes that's not where he's best suited. It's, well, that guy's can only play here. whereas Dallas can play all over here. And so sometimes you'll kind of make that decision in order to get your best group on the field. So that helps too, but you've got to recruit better at safety numbers-wise than they have in recent years. That's the one thing we did not see from Mike Mickens consistently was numbers at safety. I mean, the 22 class only had one safety, and at Jaden Bellamy, and he transferred. You know, the 23 class had Adon Shuler in it. I'm trying to think who else was in the 23 class. Let me pull up my instead of just trying to think about it, let me just pull up the signee years. But, you know, so you had the Jalen Bellamy class, the 23, you had Ben Minnick and Adon Shuler. I don't know that any of us thought Ben Minnick was going to be a starter at Notre Dame. So that's a year where I think you kind of came up a little bit short at safety. The next year you went out and got Kennedy Urlacher. He's gone. You got Tabron Benny Powell. Never thought he was a Notre Dame caliber player. He's gone. And then obviously Taye Johnson. And then 25, you went out and got Jadon Blair and Ethan Long, but now Jadon's gone. So not only have you not really landed the high caliber players, but some of the ones you thought could start here are already gone. Urlacher's already gone. You know, Jadon Blair's already gone. Ben Minnick is now gone. Tabron Benny Powell's already gone. So you find yourself in these low numbers, and that's something that Coach Henry's going to have to rectify. Now, a great start is going out and getting Zayden Gamble. That's a great start. That's a big recruiting win because he always liked Notre Dame, but it really wasn't until like the last month or two of his recruitment that Notre Dame was able to pass up Miami and Florida. Big win for Notre Dame. Big win for Notre Dame. Because Zayden Gamble is in the Xavier Watts, Adon Shuler, Alohi Gilman mold where he's never going to blow you away. He's not going to go to the combine and wow, what a freak. The way that Leonard Moore will, the way that Taye Johnson probably will, the way that Kyle Hamilton did in everything other than the 40. I mean, that's the thing that's often missed about Kyle Hamilton's combine is everybody just so focused on the 40-yard dash time that they kind of forgot to talk about all the other numbers that Kyle Hamilton posted at the combine. You know, like a 38-inch vertical jump, a 10-11 broad jump, a 6.93 cone, a 4.3 shuttle, which for a 6'4.5" kid is really good. They just obsessed on the one thing he'll never do in football, which is run in a straight line for 40 yards. You know what I mean? Like, isn't that the dumbest thing ever? Like,
Yes.
Let's over-obsess on the one thing he'll literally never do in a football game other than when he's chasing someone from behind. When does a safety ever run 40 yards in a straight line other than that guy's running for a 60-yard touchdown and I'm 10 yards behind him? But let's ignore all the football movement drills and over-obsess on that, and that's why one of the best defensive players in the NFL fell all the way to 14, right? Like, Zayden Gamble is not a guy that's going to go to the combine and, wow. Neither did Julian Love. That's why a Pro Bowler fell to the 4th round. Neither did Xavier Watts, which is why a guy who's going to be a star in the NFL, in my opinion, fell to the 3rd round. That it keeps happening. And Zayden Gamble's that kind of player. And Alohi Gilman, 6th-round draft pick, long NFL career, starter and special teams guy. So I think Zayden Gamble fits that mold. And that's why I think he's a very underrated recruit. Yeah, you can talk to me about measurables and 40 times and all that, but as a Notre Dame fan for the last decade, I've seen those guys that you all ding for that be stars at Notre Dame. Not good players, stars. Julian Love was a unanimous All-American, ran almost a 4.6 at the combine. Xavier Watts was a star for 2 years, unanimous All-American 1 year, consensus the next year, and was one stupid All-American team away from being unanimous 2 years in a row. Should have been because he was better in 24 than 23, ran almost a 4.6. Kyle Hamilton, star player. Watched him against Alabama's elite 2020 defense. They tried to test Kyle Hamilton once in the first quarter. He almost picks them off. They didn't. This is a true fact. I went back and looked at this. After Kyle almost picked him off, Mac Jones did not attempt another pass of 20 yards or more in that game. Didn't have to some degree, but they're like, yeah, we tested Kyle Hamilton once. We're not going to do that again. And all those guys were high 4.5s, 4.6 players. They were stars in college. Not good players, stars in college. Alohi Gilman was outstanding in college. 4.61. Zayden Gamble's that kind of guy. He's a football player. That was a huge pickup for Notre Dame. Also, getting John Gay the third was a big pickup because he plays nickel now, but he's a 6'2" kid that can run, that could also play safety if the need is there. So you can play him at safety, but hopefully Notre Dame is able to add another safety in this class to where they don't have to move John Gay. Like, move John Gay the third to safety because you think he can start there or help there, not because you don't have enough numbers. Because the reality is, if you can't recover in this class and in the 28 class have a really big bounce back safety class, there's a good chance over the next couple of years you're going to have to go to the portal for safeties. There's a pretty good chance there.
Well, that's been reflective of the last couple of years. You talked about one of the things that Mike Mickens wasn't able to do is stack together really, really good safety classes. There's a reason why they went to go get Rod Hurd. There's a reason why they went to go get Jalen Stroman. I'm with you completely. It's kind of that situation where if you have to keep having a discussion around, do you transition this corner to play safety or this nickel to play safety or this field corner to play safety, getting that discussion of like, okay, do you continue to rob Peter to pay Paul type of deal? Yeah, it's like, okay, maybe the answer is ramping up the recruiting at safety, and that's something that they were trying to do. I mean, I know they were in the mix for quite some time with Gavin Williams. He ended up committing elsewhere. You know, that's a big time loss. No way around that. But there's still some other really good safeties on the board in the 27 class. But the fact of the matter is safety recruiting has been thin the last couple seasons, and that's something that they're going to have to continue ramping up.
I have to interject something right here because I'm really pissed off right now, guys. My wife knows I'm hungry and didn't have lunch today. She's currently heating up chicken parm. I can smell it. The chicken parm I made for her Mother's Day. She's heating it up. So now I'm sitting there trying to do a show, starving, and all I can smell is chicken parm in my face the entire time. Not cool.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.
But like safety recruiting is going to be the one thing. And this isn't like, what are you doing, Aaron Henry? As I said, this has been a bit of a problematic area for Notre Dame. They've been able to land like one dude at safety a year, but just consistently falling short at numbers. And then having issues with retention at the position has also been an issue. So this is not a new thing that like, man, Aaron Henry not getting Gavin Williams. Mike Mickens would have got him. I don't think that whoever the coach was going to determine Gavin Williams coming to Notre Dame. I think it had a lot more to do with getting a giant financial or giant NIL offer and the fact that he wants to stay closer to home. I think that's a bigger reason why. But you've got to have a rally point. You've got to have a rally point. So yeah, somebody in the chat, this is awesome. Somebody in the chat just said, Brian, please stay on topic. Are we boring you? That is very well done. Very well played, my friend. Very well played. That is absolutely spot on. That was awesome. But yeah, I mean that's something that they're going to have to address. That's one of the few things that, and I don't know that we talk about this enough. We talk about needing to consistently stack classes on the defensive end and D tackle and receiver. And I don't often think about how safety recruiting's got to improve as well because they get so many dudes. But in a lot of those years where they get dudes, that's the only dude they got. It's the only person they got. Taye Johnson's the only safety left on the roster from his class. Joey O'Brien arrived as the only safety from his class. Ethan Long may soon be the only safety left on the team from his class. Hopefully Brandon Logan comes back. If Brandon Logan comes back and can turn his athleticism into good football play, I think that solves some of the things that we're struggling with right now. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But you're just going to have to do a better job of addressing it at the high school ranks. I don't think that means you panic and take someone that can't play for you in the 27 class because there is the portal. But I do think that you need to figure out some answers in the 28 class and still try to look for a set 27 safety that can play for you. Whether that's flipping Jalen Jones from Miami. Well, I'd stay on Gavin Williams. I wouldn't give up on Gavin Williams. Or just evaluate. Is there anybody else out there? Could it be Greedy James? Could it be somebody like that? I think those are things that they've got to figure out. If you can find a player that can play for you in 27, great. But don't force the issue to get a kid just to be a body, because that's what the portal's for. And then just go out there and maybe load up a little bit more in 2028 and 2029. But that is a position that needs to be addressed. At cornerback, Trev, it's real simple instructions for Aaron Henry. Keep doing what they've been doing. It's literally that simple. That's the one position Mike Mickens recruited at an elite level every single year. This is who he added, 22. Benjamin Morrison. 23, Christian Gray. 24, there's a guy named Leonard Moore, turned out to be a pretty good player.
He's
25, Dallas Gold, Mark Zachary. 26, Kari Adams, Aiden Pouncey, Chad Smith. 27, Xavier Hassan, and Ace Alston. Just keep doing what you've been doing. That's it.
Let me ask you this as we get ready to wrap up this segment. If they answer the safety question as far as like on the recruiting trail, would you consider Notre Dame a true powerhouse when recruiting defensive backs?
I think they already are. I mean, like if your issue is, okay, you've got a 5-star corner, a 5-star safety, 2 other top 100 guys at corner, you're not a powerhouse because you didn't get a second safety. Because there's other teams that are powerhouses will have those issues as well, which is why they go to the portal. Why is Ohio State going to the portal to get corners and safeties? Because sometimes, you lose guys, things like that. Like we're not having the same conversation if Kennedy Urlacher and Jadon Blair don't transfer. Like we're not having this conversation. We're like, hey, this is great because it's not just been recruiting; it's also been retention, keeping those guys happy in the depth chart. And then, so I think that's part of it as well. So I think they're already a powerhouse on the recruiting trail. They're just not perfect yet. Does that make sense? That's really my thing is they've been a powerhouse, but it's not perfection yet. And that's a position where you've got to get better. Now, if you wanted to take safety aside outside of the cornerback as a whole and just look at safety, I think that's where you could say, okay, let's raise some questions. They're getting dudes every year, right? They got Adon, they got Taye, they got Jadon Blair, they got Joey O'Brien. Like they're getting dudes. It's just you've got to maybe get a couple dudes every year. And that's where you're kind of falling short. So I think safety, you could maybe say that about Trevor, is that has not been consistently powerhouse recruiting because you're getting dudes, but not enough dudes. Cornerback is as good as any team in the country. Yeah. So when you put them together, you're a powerhouse. You're just not perfect yet. And it's just loading up on some safety a little bit more and then keeping guys. And that's as much as the GM. Like, it's not Mike Mickens' fault that they didn't keep Jadon Blair. That was on the GM and the D coordinator. I don't know what they could have done with Kennedy. He wanted to play, and he looked at the safety room and said, I'm not going to play here. I understand that. So go closer to home. I don't fault the kid for that. I mean, I get it. He did it in a way. He was respectful about it. He went to the staff. He didn't talk trash or say anything bad. And, he loved it at Notre Dame. From what I'm told, he just wanted to play, and he just didn't see a pathway to playing at Notre Dame, which he wasn't wrong. So it's just all those things add up to where your numbers aren't where you want them to be, partly because you kind of recruited too well, because you're not going to have Taye Johnson for 4 or 5 years like you did, Xavier Watts or, possibly a Don Shuler. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But I think they're recruiting at an elite level, Trev. It's just this is one area where I think there's some improvements that can be done. But also when you're recruiting corner the way you are the last couple of years, you signed 6 corners in 2 years. Only one of them's transferred so far. And by the way, he's probably going to go start at Colorado. That's the thing that's different now is these guys are leaving and they're going to the schools they're coming from and they're playing.
Yeah.
It's in the past, guys would transfer from Notre Dame and never play. Now it's like Jadon's going to play a bunch at Missouri. Kennedy played a bunch for USC last year. Cree Thomas, we've already heard Deion Sanders say he's like their number 1 corner already. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference. Well, hang on to some of those guys. You brought up the point earlier. If Cree Thomas is still at Notre Dame, does he move to safety, or do they move a freshman sooner to safety? Do they move Jaden Sanders? I mean, those are all questions that we don't know the answer to because he did leave. But if you keep recruiting corner the way you have, that helps you at safety because you do have some guys that can go move over and play that position. So I think that's part of it as well.
Brian, to take us home here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We have a daily mailbag to take us home and into the weekend. Actually, I guess for you'll be on the evening show. But for the most part, takes us into the weekend. And if this does happen to be your first mailbag, you can always put MB for mailbag, or you can put a mailbox emoji. It lets us know to set your question aside. The super chats always get bumped up to the top.
Trevin, we are going to get started. We have no super chats today, so we are going to get started here with the first question that was submitted, which was from Sean Stewart.
With this being one of the premier secondaries in the country, can they be more dominant than the 2024 squad, which was a no-fly zone for most of the season?
So I can almost guarantee, no matter how good Leonard Moore and Taye Johnson and Christian Gray and DJ McKinney and Adon Shuler play this year, they will not look like that 24 secondary from a number standpoint. And that is because Chris Ash's defense will not allow them to limit teams to that degree throwing the football. That's not a complaint or a criticism, because his defense is willing to give a little bit up in the secondary. It doesn't mean they can't be a top secondary or a top pass defense. They can be a better pass defense than they were last year, Trev. There's no doubt about it. But it'll never look like that 24 unit because the scheme is different. Just like the 24 team had no chance at being anywhere nearly as good as what we think the 26 team is going to be in the run defense. So just understand where I'm coming from. That's not a criticism of Chris Ash. It's just Al Golden's number one priority was shutting down the opposition pass game. And he did. And it left the run game a little bit more vulnerable. They weren't terrible. I think this pass defense, if like Sean, if with the spirit of your question, if they're as good as they can be this year, they're going to be a much better pass defense in 26 than they were a run defense in 24. But it won't look like the 24 statistically. What it will look like, however, is a defense that makes a lot of plays in the secondary. So they may give up more, 20, 30 more yards than what they did. They may give up, over 6 yards an attempt. They may give up a couple more big plays because they take more chances. But what you're also going to see is the defense that gets their hands on the football a lot. And that is something that we did see last year. So it's about, like, let's not comparing it to the Al Golden era. And that's not what Sean's doing. I'm the one doing that. And I'm just using this to kind of make a point. But it's more so about figuring out how to effectively dominate on defense and how to effectively evaluate how they're dominating on defense. So, for example, the 24 defense, which was so good, that year in 16 games, they had 63 passes broken up, and they had 19 interceptions. Last year's defense in 12 games gave up a lot more yards per attempt, more yards completion, right? In 12 games. Not even close to where they were. Actually, let's put numbers to this, Trev. So the Notre Dame 2024 pass defense was among the best in the nation, holding teams to 169 passing yards per game. They led the nation in quarterback and passer rating at 104.4. They were one of the top 5 defenses, giving up 6 yards per attempt. In 2025, they gave up about over 40 more yards passing per game. The passer rating was good, but still not as good as it was in 2024. And they gave up 2 more yards per attempt, especially compared to the 23 defense. So Notre Dame last year ranked 19th in yards per pass attempt allowed last year, 9th in quarterback rating after the 2 previous years leading the nation in quarterback rating. They fell, I use air quotes, to 9th. But in 16 games, the 2024 defense picked off 19 passes, and the 23 defense picked off 16 passes in 13 games. Last year in 12 games, Notre Dame picked off 21 passes. In 2023, Notre Dame had 48 pass breakups in 13 games. Last year, they had 24. They had 63 in 16 games. Last year, in only 12 games, they had 55. So your disruptive numbers per game were significantly better than they were the year before because it's the nature of what you're trying to do. And it was even better once you got to Arkansas on. Like, they were terrible at that the first 3 games. So I think you have to understand what Chris Ash is willing to give up. He's willing to give up some yards for more impact plays. He's willing to give up some pass yards to be more dominant in the run game. That's just the nature of it. So I don't know that it'll look like the no-fly zone in that super low completion percentage allowed, number 1 in the country in quarterback rating, number 1 in yards allowed per attempt. It may not look like that. It definitely won't look like they did in yards, but it's going to be way more disruptive. And so from that regard, I do think that this secondary could be, honestly, Notre Dame's most disruptive in a long time. It really can. Because what you're adding, in DJ McKinney is a guy that that had his own fair share of disruption numbers at Colorado the last few years. So he only had 1 pick last year, 5 pass breakups. The year before, he had as being targeted a lot opposite Leonard Moore. I mean, opposite Travis Hunter, he had 3 picks and 9 breakups, and he didn't play as many games last year. So you're adding a guy that was very rangy and got a lot of plays on the ball to a defense that is very rangy and gets a lot of plays on the ball already. And so I think that's where this defense is making it. It's more big plays, more dominant plays, more game-changing plays than what we saw before. And that's what was so frustrating about the Miami game, because there were opportunities for them in that game to make plays. You had the touchdown that Carson Hobbs gave up where Luke Talich was out of position. You had a Don Shuler not making a play on the ball. Like, there was opportunities there to make plays. They just didn't make it in game 1 of the Chris Ash defense. If you could transplant the defense from game 6 into game 1, that's a little bit of a different story. You didn't do that, but the point is they got better at that as the year went on, and they were in that defense more, and they got more comfortable in it. And that's why I think we're going to see more of that in 2026. I hope that made sense.
Absolutely. From Salty, is there a decent chance that the Irish can flip Greedy James, or is he locked on Longhorns? And if so, is he keeping his June 12th official visit date?
Well, I do think that they're still recruiting him. I do think they have a shot to flip him, as do other programs. I think Ohio State is also trying to flip him. And I do, as of now, anticipate him taking his visit on the 12th. He likes Notre Dame a lot. I'll be a little surprised at this point in time if he sticks with Texas. I think the question is more of who will he flip to? I think that's probably my bigger question at the moment. Notre Dame is in the conversation. They view him as can play corner, can play safety. He would solve some problems. I know Brian Smith saw Greedy in person this winter at a camp down in Florida and playing corner, and Brian likes him a lot. So I've only seen game film, and it's limited. I mean, I've only seen highlights, and it's limited highlights. I haven't been able to find any game film of him yet. But I do trust Brian's evaluations, and he saw him live, and he thinks he can play it at Notre Dame. So he's certainly a guy to keep in line. My question would be is if they don't get another safety, do they still give him a shot to play corner? I think they will, and then see how it shakes out. And then, maybe he moves to safety, maybe somebody else does. And this kind of falls in line with the next question from Salty Virginia Peanuts. And so, and that is with Xavier Hassan and Ace Austin on board, the Irish don't need another cornerback, but should they pursue one? Yeah, that's where I'd say I'd kind of disagree with you. You're a 3 cornerback defense. You've only got 2 cornerbacks committed. There's always a need for a third. Now, you could technically say, yeah, but John Gay, the third, is a nickel as well. Fair. But my point is keep recruiting talented corners, especially ones that have some length, like Greedy James, who's over 6 feet tall, because those guys can be nickels and they can eventually be really good safeties as well. Or you get a third corner in this class that's really, really good. Maybe now Notre Dame's like, look, we think Dallas can be a dude at corner, but we also think Dallas could step right into the role that Adon Shuler had or Taye Johnson had, and they're both in the NFL. And we think as opposed to going to getting a transfer guy, we think we can move Dallas back to safety and he can step into the starting lineup right now. But you're not going to do that if you don't have comfort with your depth chart at corner. And maybe it's not Dallas. Maybe it's Jaden Sanders. Maybe it's Aiden Pouncey. I'm just using Dallas as an example. So I think that's why you always continue to keep recruiting talented players and don't stop loading up at corner. All right, we got a question down here from ND Wine and Cheese.
When the Notre Dame and ACC deal is finished, how long can the ACC last, assuming Miami, Clemson, and Florida State leave? Is there a scenario where they are okay without Notre Dame?
I mean, there's a scenario in which they're okay without Notre Dame. I just don't know what that would be right now. It would be – go ahead, Trev. You got something to say. Let me hear what you have to say on it.
They would need Clemson and Florida State to, one, stay in the league and to be better football-wise than what they are now.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a major driver, because when Clemson was going through their run, there was no question of like, will the ACC be able to last, because they had a dominant power in college football. Now, Clemson doesn't
in the current NIL era where the lack of financial support to football programs was as problematic as it is now.
Absolutely. So that would be a big step in the right direction for them. The ACC for a very long time has been like a one-team dominant league. It's not like the Big Ten where there's always kind of that big three. And for a while, it was Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Now it's Ohio State, Oregon, and IU. The SEC, any given year, even when Alabama was on their run, it's not like Georgia sucked. It's not like, Florida sucked. So there was always at least 3 to 4 teams in the SEC that were in the top 20 conversation across the country. The ACC, it's always been pretty one team dominant. You would have Florida State from time to time. Louisville had Lamar Jackson for a couple years, and they were kind of in that running with Clemson, but it was always Clemson and then a sizable gap. And so one thing that the ACC would need is for Clemson and Florida State. One, they need Florida State to just not be putrid. Let's be real about that. You can't be 1-11 and 2-10, and you know what I mean. And then for Clemson, it's returning back to a routinely talked about playoff team and not getting a playoff bid because you were ranked like 19th, but then won the ACC and got the automatic bid. They're consistently around the 9th to 12th team in the country. That would go a huge way. That'd be a scenario where the ACC could survive without Notre Dame.
The problem with that, Trevor, is let's say Florida State just somehow gets good the next couple of years. I don't know that necessarily fixes their revenue problem.
Sure.
And same thing with a lot of schools. The issue is that you just don't have the support for football that you do in this league compared to others. I mean, just look at something as simple as stadium sizes. When you've got SEC schools filling out 90 to 100,000 seat stadiums every week and the ACC struggling to fill out 50 seat stadiums. Yeah, that's a problem. You're going to be limited in revenue. And now you're also in a league that has the worst of the Power 4 teams in TV revenue. And here's something that's often lost when you read these dumb articles. And they saw Notre Dame doesn't have the TV power they used to. Yeah, they do. The problem is they're playing ACC schools, and nobody gives a crap about ACC schools. I mean, you want to talk about, I did this thing, Trev, I don't know if you're familiar with this term. So if you're not, I'll explain it to you. It's called I did research. Are you familiar with this term?
What is that again?
So you actually instead of I have a point of view and I'm just going to take things that fit that point of view and not actually know what I'm talking about. That's one way to go. If you work for Sporting News or, well, actually I shouldn't say that because Bill Bender does a great job of Sporting News, but a certain guy at Sporting News did recently and guy at USA Today guy named Matt Hayes did today. But you actually go and actually look for real facts and data. And so instead of barfing your opinion all over your keyboard and onto an article, you actually do this thing where you actually put real numbers and real data and actually make a sound argument based on reality, not your feels. It's pretty cool. We should try it sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
So it really works out really well. I kind of like it. So I did that in preparation for some of my responses, and because I just get tired of these lazy narratives. Well, Notre Dame's only X on TV numbers. Well, okay. So I went and looked it up. Notre Dame had 11 games last year on network TV because they don't do streaming. So they don't do Peacock and SEC Network. They don't take numbers for streaming services. So you only have 11 games. And of those 11 games, 5 times it was Notre Dame's game against this team, the most viewed game for that team. Miami by over 4 million. Purdue, Boise State, Pitt, and Stanford. They were number 2 for Arkansas, USC, Boston College, and Navy. The only Navy game that was greater is always going to be greater, and that's Navy-Army because it's literally the only game that's played that weekend. The only game for USC that was lower, was smaller, or bigger was USC-Oregon, which was a November game where playoffs are on the line. And then the only game that was bigger for Arkansas was Texas because Texas is the biggest TV draw in the country right now. And it was by not even 1 million. So 5 of those games. So you say, well, total numbers. But yeah, but 5 times you had the better team. Let's look at some specifics, okay? Notre Dame and Purdue drew 3.1 million viewers. Purdue, Ohio State was at 1.847. Purdue, Indiana was 2.68. And Purdue, Michigan was 1.6. So Notre Dame was closer to doubling Ohio State, Purdue than they were being on the same page as them. Purdue, Arkansas, Notre Dame drew a 4.26 million views. Arkansas, Texas A&M was 1.57. Arkansas, Ole Miss was 1.41. Notre Dame drew more viewers for Boise State than what Purdue and Ohio State drew against Purdue. What Texas A&M drew against Arkansas. What USC drew against Nebraska. What Miami drew against Florida State. Think about this. There were more people that watched Notre Dame and Boise State than that watched Pitt and Florida State. I said Miami, Florida State. I meant Pitt and Florida State. There were as many people that watched Notre Dame, Boise State, same number, 2.2 million, that watched Pitt and Miami, with Miami battling for Miami's got to win to get a playoff spot. Last game of the year. Think about that. The problem for Notre Dame and their numbers is because they freaking play in the ACC. Their numbers outside the ACC this year were far better. They had a 5.8 million against Texas A&M, which was their third best number. Texas A&M was number one, and then Texas A&M and LSU was higher. But it was the third best game for A&M by a mile. They were over 4 million most for Miami, but they were 5.8 for Texas A&M. They were 3.1 for Purdue. They were 4.26 for Arkansas. They were 3.1 for Navy. They were 4.8 for USC, and they were 2.2 for even Boise. It's the ACC games that draw them down outside of Miami. The viewership for NC State, they put that on friggin' Peacock. BC Notre Dame was 1.7. BC Stanford was 1.5. Most that Stanford had all year, and the game was at 10-something at night. Notre Dame Pitt was the only ACC game outside of Miami that drew anything at 3.957. Pitt's next best game, Notre Dame, 3.957 million for Notre Dame Pitt. The next best game was Miami at 2.2 million. Pitt, Florida State, 2.0. Notre Dame Navy drew more than any other ACC game that Notre Dame played in last year, other than Pitt and Miami, and Pitt was game day. As I've said, in the last 20 years, their game day's been at Pitt 3 times. 2 of them were with Notre Dame in town. So start having Notre Dame play nothing but Big Ten and SEC schools. Guess what? Notre Dame's numbers are going to go way up in their top 5. But it's because they play all these garbage teams in the ACC that don't care about football because their fans don't care. That's the problem. So all these ACC fans crying, here's a thought. Fill out your stadium. Why is the SEC so much? Because SEC fans care about football. You look at the top 10, it's like, I think all Big Ten, it's the top 10 this year was all Big Ten, SEC, and then Notre Dame at 10. That's it. Miami was the highest ACC team at like 11 or 12 in views. And a big chunk of that, 29% of that, was the Notre Dame game. So, and their second highest game was an SEC game against Florida. So the problem with the TV viewership for Notre Dame is the SEC, or is the ACC. That's the problem. And Big and Insured by Big just said, can you imagine the viewership that we would have seen between Notre Dame and LSU if they played when Brian Kelly was there? That's the whole point, man. It's insane. But Big, I'll flip it back to you to make the point. Imagine if Brian Kelly went to Pitt, went to Florida State even, went to anywhere other than Miami. Do you think the numbers would have been anywhere close to what they would have been if Notre Dame and LSU would have played? Not even close. Because ACC fans don't care about their sports. It's not big state, small state. Alabama and Mississippi are not big states. It's just they care about their sports there. They don't care as much about any of the Carolina schools in football. They don't care. They have 50,000 seat stadiums maybe, and they can't even fill them most of the time. Like, what's even more embarrassing about the statistic, about 90% of the Notre Dame games are sellouts in the ACC, and the conference games outside of when Notre Dame's in town are like something like 20-something%. What's even more pathetic about that, Trevor, is they all play in tiny stadiums. Wake Forest Stadium only holds 31,500 people. That's it. They're closer to MAC schools than they are to anybody in the SEC. Like that's what makes it such a joke. You have a 31,000 seat stadium and you can't fill it unless Notre Dame comes to town. Duke only has 35,000 people in their stands. Remember when Notre Dame went there a couple years ago, they added a bunch of seats. Remember that? They added a bunch of seats for that game so they could sell more tickets. That's why they suck. That's why they have no money, because nobody cares in your league about your sport. And then you're going to get butthurt because Notre Dame gets to throw their weight around when the reality is playing Notre Dame results in usually minimum 5 to 10 million additional dollars that you would make instead of playing anybody else. And that's why the ACC has the relation with Notre Dame. Is that right there? So that's why I say I don't know that there's a lot of hope for the ACC, even if Notre Dame leaves, because Clemson doesn't have any problem selling out their 80-something thousand seat stadium. The problem is there's nobody like them in the ACC. Miami's got a big crowd, but what does their stadium hold? Like 60-something thousand? I don't think. Yeah, I mean it's not like, because they play in an NFL stadium, and so it's just. You just don't have the same 65,000. You just don't have the same support from the fan base. Pitt's at 68, but Pitt never comes close to filling out 68 unless Notre Dame's in town. In the last 5 years, I think I only found 2 games that had over 60,000. And it was either when Clemson comes to town or Notre Dame comes to town. Because here's the deal. Clemson is more of an SEC school than they are an ACC school as far as support. Fan support, financial support, things like that. That's just the reality. That's why there are only 2 schools that generated more athletic revenue than Clemson last year, and it was Stanford and Miami. And Miami's because they went on the playoff run. So that's the thing. What Florida State might be one. What's Florida State's stadium capacity? Like Doak Campbell just got a renovation. They have decent sizes, but again, there's nobody sniffing. They're at 60. Doak Campbell's got 67,000.
I would have thought that was bigger.
Yeah, I would have too. So you look at the Big Ten, Trev, and they've got multiple teams with 100,000 seat stadiums. SEC has multiple teams with over 100,000 seat stadiums. I mean, you look at the SEC. Here's the SEC, Trev. Let's look at this. The smallest is Vanderbilt. They're over 40, which means they're still bigger than several teams. Next is Mississippi State, who's over 60. Kentucky's got over 60. Missouri's got over 60. Ole Miss has over 64. Arkansas's got 72. And they're 11th in the SEC. Now we're into the top 10 teams. South Carolina, 77.5. Oklahoma, 86. Auburn, 88. They're 8th, and they have more than Clemson, who's number 1 in the ACC. Number 7, Florida, 88.5. Number 6, Georgia, 93. Number 5, Bama, 100. Number 4, Texas, over 100. Tennessee's number 3, over 100, over 101. LSU's number 2 at 102, and then A&M has over 102. The biggest in the ACC is what? Clemson at like 81. I mean, this is the capacity for the ACC. Wake Forest, 31.5. SMU, 32. Duke, 40. BC, 44. Syracuse, 49. Stanford at 50. North Carolina at 50. Georgia Tech at 55. NC State at 56. Louisville at 60, Virginia at 61, Cal at 63, Miami at 65, Virginia Tech at 66, Pitt at 68, Florida State at 79, Clemson at 81. Clemson at 81.5 is number 1 in the ACC. They would rank, let's see here, they would rank 10th in the SEC. That's the problem, Trevor. It's a money business, and money requires you to watch TV and show up to the stadium, and ACC fans outside of Florida State when they're good, Miami, and Clemson do neither, except win when they play Notre Dame. Think about that. A game between a ranked Pitt team and Miami, Saturday after Thanksgiving. Miami needs to win to make the college football playoffs, got almost doubled by Notre Dame Pitt from 2 weeks before. 19,000 more people in the stands. And don't even get me started on ticket prices being different. So I just don't know that the ACC can survive because their fan base doesn't care. Apathy in the ACC region is what kills them.
Yeah.
North Carolina is a much bigger state than Alabama. It's a much bigger state than Mississippi. It's a bigger state than Tennessee, I believe. I think it's a bigger state than Louisiana, I believe. It's a bigger state than South Carolina. South Carolina is not a very big state, and they've got 2 Power 4 football teams that both have 70 or 80,000 seat stadiums. North Carolina they're in the 50s everywhere, and they can't sell out. So people don't care. That's why I don't know that they can survive. That's why Clemson and Miami and Florida State won out, because they know the rest of the league. They're carrying the rest of the league, and that's why they won out. Because they're like, wait a minute, why are we having to get the same amount of money that these teams that can't even fill up 30,000, 40,000 seat stadiums are making, who have no TV revenue? Why are we carrying them? Why are they making the same amount of money that we make? And I see very few national writers that care to make that argument. Like, if you really cared about the ACC or want to, what's best for the ACC, you're an idiot if you're writing that that the ACC needs to dump Notre Dame. You're an idiot. I'm sorry, that's a mean thing to say. I called someone a moron yesterday, but when you write these things, I don't know what else you want me to say. A dying league that can't put fans in the stands and nobody watches on TV, and you want to get rid of the team that has the most TV views of any team in your league by a mile. Miami was the only team close this year. And that's because they had Notre Dame, Florida, and Florida State on their schedule. Their 2 most viewed games were out-of-conference games. The next highest team was Florida State, and they were 10 million views behind Notre Dame. And you want to kick that team out. You want to kick a team out who you sell out your stadium at a 67% greater rate when that team comes to play. You want to kick them out of your league? Does that make you feel better? This is virtue signaling in sports is what this is. It's the same thing. I want to take the side of the little guy. Yeah, let Notre Dame leave that league. Let the ACC tell Notre Dame to pound sand and see what happens. And then this notion that you think that nobody's going to take Notre Dame, you don't think the Big Ten would be willing to schedule a similar agreement with Notre Dame? You don't think that would be the case? I promise you that there will be schools. Why do you think Greg Sankey talks to beat Bavacqua as much as he does? Because they know. Why would, if we have to play an extra power conference game, wouldn't it be great to have 4 of our 5 teams have to play Notre Dame in the non-conference? Look at what we did. Purdue, Notre Dame almost doubled Purdue, Michigan this year. It had about 1.3 more million viewers than Ohio State Purdue. It had 500,000 more views than the Saturday after Thanksgiving game between Indiana and Purdue. Number 2 Indiana, undefeated Indiana, rival of Purdue, Indiana, had 500,000 fewer viewers than when 0-2 Notre Dame played Purdue in week 4 on NBC, which notoriously has worse ratings than what ESPN and ABC have. And it disgusts me that no one is doing this research on a national level. It always is it's like me or Pete Sampson or John Bryce or somebody that primarily covers Notre Dame has to make this argument because nobody's interested in actually doing their effing homework. Sorry. And saying that, I'm sick of it. Dude, yeah, let's let the coaches in the ACC have their way and boot Notre Dame. Notre Dame will give you this, and then I can't wait to hear how many ACC directors, athletic directors, then get on the phone with Notre Dame and say, "Hey, can we schedule some home and homes with you, please?" Because I'm that's not a guess. I know that for a fact. Because what's the one biggest thing that ACC schools cry about, Trevor, truly cry about behind the scenes. What's their biggest beef with Notre Dame? What's their biggest beef? You know the answer. They don't get to play Notre Dame enough. That's what they complain about. So this rant means that this mailbag's not going to be as many questions.
No, that's it. But you're not saying anything not factual. And I'll take it a step further here, man. I know exactly what's going to happen if Notre Dame leaves the ACC. The amount of national articles that'll come out titled, Notre Dame left the ACC to die, a pinnacle of the collegiate sport, not looking out for the ACC. That's 100% what would happen.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. And
I apologize for saying F, because I know that there's dads and moms that listen with their kids, and I'm really sorry about that. And we keep this PG. And I'm all for emotion. I'm also for energy, but that's not okay. And that's not us. So I do apologize for that. But I just get really excited about it, like really upset about this stuff. It just really bothers me. And it bothers me too, because, you see so many good writers that cover Notre Dame, and Tim O'Malley and Tim Priester and Pete Sampson. And then you just watch all this slop that gets written on a national level. And it just disgusts me because it's lazy. It's lazy and it's ignorant. And it's intentionally fabricated and intentionally spun. And it's intentionally ignorant. I think they know these things. I can't believe that someone that writes for Sporting News and someone that writes for USA Today is so ignorant about the sport they cover that they don't know the things that I've pointed out to them. I think they do know it. That's why they won't engage in it. But it's easier to write a clickbait article where you do the cool thing, which is to go at Notre Dame. So that's fine. I'll say yes. I'll say today what I said yesterday. When I see those articles, I'm coming at you. And you're going to get ratioed in a really bad way. And I'm not someone who necessarily cares about that, but I'm going to make your life miserable for a little bit when you write in a lazy article. If you write an anti-Notre Dame article that's factual based and researched, I'll applaud you. I'll give you some honest pushback if it's warranted, because there are things you can say about Notre Dame that are valid criticisms. Hey, why is Notre Dame treated like this team when they haven't won a title since 1988? Okay, there's an angle you could go with that where there's that's a valid case to make. And then I'd argue, because it's not really about championships, it's about this and it's about dollars and there's these other things, and we can have that. And it could be a good, healthy conversation. But when you write this slop, I find it professionally offensive. And I'm just not going to tolerate it anymore. And fortunately for me, I talked to my boss, and he's cool with me going at people like this, because it was a real fun conversation. I looked in the mirror and said, Brian, are you cool with this? And Brian looked back at me and said, yes, I am. So that's what we're going to do this offseason. I'm not going to just let it slide. I'm not going to take the high road anymore. Notre Dame does enough of that for everyone. I'm going to fight back. And so, sure, you get your clicks, but it's not going to be a real fun, pleasant few days for you, because I'm going to make sure Notre Dame fans, number one, see it, and number two, that they're armed with the facts and the data they need to show you how dumb your point of view is.
Don't worry, everyone. Brian and his boss and the VP of IB sat down.
I also consulted the VP over there.
Which was also a very short conversation. He said, hey, Trev, I'm about to do this. And I was like, all right, cool. Looking forward to it.
I had to talk to my boss. I said, Self, are you okay? Somebody said I had a Tyler Durden moment. Yes, I did. And that version of me is coming out more and more and more. And yeah, it's frustrating. Let's get to some more questions here, Trev, because I want to get to these before we wrap up. More of these.
From Justin ND Sniper, in the short time you've had to observe him, are there any significant differences in the coaching style between Aaron Henry and Mike Mickens that you've noticed?
Not really, no. I think they do a lot of things similarly, a lot about technique, a lot about proper footwork, a lot about proper hand play, a lot about positioning, proper positioning, not a lot of yelling, a lot of teaching, a lot of hands-on coaching as well, like demonstrating for them. Because Mike Mickens and Aaron Henry both played DB at a high level. Mike Mickens played at Cincinnati when they were really good in the Big East under Brian Kelly. Aaron Henry played at Wisconsin under Brett Bielema. He understands what big-time DB play looks like. I think they also both spent a little bit of time in the National Football League. I don't think either of them had very long careers in the NFL, but both of them, I believe, played in the NFL. So a lot of hands-on experience, a lot of hands-on teaching and coaching. And I honestly don't see a lot of differences between the two from what we can see. Film room may be different, other things may be different drills. I mean, certainly different drills, but even then, not a lot of different things. It's real practical stuff. It's not like a million bag drills. It's a lot of working on hand play, working on transitions against the receiver, things like that. So I've liked what I've seen from them so far.
From James Delaney, with Kari Adams coming to Notre Dame, do you think a Baltimore pipeline can be built or rebuilt? Would love to see guys from my city playing for Notre Dame.
It's going to be tough, James. I don't know that it's an area where you're going to see Notre Dame consistently get guys. I mean, I can't think of a single guy from the area they're recruiting in the 27 class. It's just not I don't know an area where you're going to consistently see that kind of success. Now, I think what could happen is if Kari Adams comes to Notre Dame and is successful, now you can point and say, hey, look, we got Cam Hart that wasn't too far outside the area. He's a Maryland kid. You've got Kari from Baltimore. Now you can start having maybe a little bit more if Kari pans out. But I don't think just getting him necessarily opens the pipeline. It's about, can you translate some of these players into the National Football League? That's going to be the key that really moves things.
From Trev's buy-sell hold glasses, which of the new assistant coaches has the most to prove this year?
That's a good question. I would say probably Charlie Partridge, simply because I think his position is the most important to the defense's success, and he also has the most newcomers. Brian John Marie, I think, is a really good linebacker coach, but his job is a lot easier than what the line this year. Now, next year, it may be a different story. You know what I mean? But right now, he has the job is like, don't screw it up. That's kind of his job. With Charlie Partridge, you got 2 new transfers. You had lost a bunch of guys. With Aaron Henry, I think he's closer to Brian John Marie. It's like, hey, dude, you got a lot of start. You got 4 starters coming back, right? And the guy that we went out and got in the portal was a 3-year starter in the Big 12. Like, just don't screw this up. Charlie Partridge is the one that he's got to replace Gabriel Rubio and Donovan Heinisch and Jared Dawson, Josh Burnham, Junior Tilamaka, Jordan Patelho. There's a lot more guys that he has to replace to get this defensive line playing at an elite level than what we see this year from the other 2 coaches. Now, next year may be a different story, and he may have the easier job. But right now, I think not the most. I think that none of them have anything to prove as far as how good they are. It's about how good they are at Notre Dame. And I would say that Charlie Partridge probably has the most responsibility. I think they're all proven coaches. I'd say he has the most responsibility and prove with his unit, not prove as a coach. They're all proven coaches, but prove with his unit, I would say be Coach Partridge.
I'm with you on that, because I would say out of the 3 position groups on defense, the secondary, the linebackers, and the D-line needs their returning dudes to take the biggest jumps relative to the other returning dudes. Like Brian John Marie kind of has to Kingston has to come back healthy, but it's like, all right, Drake, to varying degrees, you kind of just need to be who you were last year. Jaden Osbury, continue being who you were. We just got done talking about in the secondary. It's like there are some fine-tuning things that Leonard Moore could do. But if he's just a unanimous All-American again, Notre Dame will be in a pretty decent spot. Same thing with the safety tandem. Whereas Boubacar does need to take a bigger jump compared to Drake and Leonard to be considered that national guy. Bryce Young needs to take that bigger jump. So I'm with you there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Real quick, couple back-to-back questions from Salty. Trev, I'll ask because I like it's your opinion on it. First one from Salty. Will we see Dallas Golden starting at some point this season?
Yes. He started 3 games as a true freshman. I have every reason to believe that he will at some point, for one reason or another, be starting at some point this year for Notre Dame.
Here's another one from Salty. Will we see Joey O'Brien starting at some point time this season?
I'm right now. I'm going to say no. His timeline for his health is just, I don't know when that's going to be. I don't know how much of fall camp he's going to miss. And I think his path to starting is a little bit less, because Dallas Golden can start at multiple positions. He could start at field corner or he could start at nickel. Mm-hmm. And like we've talked about before, if the need ever arises, he could start at safety. I don't think they would do that this year because he hasn't practiced it. Whereas with Joey O'Brien, it would take, I think, an injury. I don't see him this year passing up either one of Taye Johnson or Adon Shuler. But I think he still has some legwork that he has to put in as far as becoming an all-around football player to even pass up Luke Talich in the rotation yet. But so I'm less confident in that. So right now I'll say no. Some of that just depends on when his injuries come around.
I'll just simply say I hope not, because that means there's a game where you don't have Taye Johnson or Adon Shuler.
From Acupuncture, do you feel Notre Dame will implement more big dime packages?
Possible. Yeah, I think there's some teams that like to run the ball out of some spread sets on this year's schedule that you might feel a need to go with that. Yeah, I think especially where I could really see it being effective is in the red zone. When you're trying to get a little bit bigger and rangier and the windows are a little tighter, and maybe you want to put a 6'4" guy, down in sort of that big dime package and make him, he's the one that is trying to take the hook curl away or the out cuts and things like that. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I could too.
How much? I don't know how much, but I think we'll see more of it. I think there's more trust in Luke Talich moving around and making plays for you this year than there would have been last year, partly because of what he did last year.
From Andrew Gilmore, is this the best secondary in Notre Dame history?
Well, it's got a long way to go to get there. Again, for us, history is of our lifetimes. And I would say if we're talking Trevor's lifetime, there's a lot better chance that it can be that than mine. Simply because Lou Holtz had some great secondaries under Lou Holtz, especially like 92, 93 when you had Tom Carter, and in 93 you had Bobby Taylor and Jeff Burris, who were both high draft picks and All-Americans. So and the 1988 secondary was really good with Todd Lights, Dan Smagala, Pat Terrell, George Streeter, Tawan Francisco. Like that was a really good secondary as well. 2018 with Julian Love and Troy Pride and Alohi Gilman and Jalen Elliott was really, really good. That unit just lacked a nickel. That was one of the big drawbacks for that group. So we've seen some years where the secondary has been very good. The 24 secondary was outstanding. 23 secondary had the cornerback room was elite. But the issue there was safety wasn't as good. It was Xavier was great, but then what around him wasn't quite as good. Great kids, smart kids. DJ Brown was a really smart kid, really hard worker. He just lacked the athleticism of what we're seeing on the field now. Yeah. Think about that. 3 years ago, Notre Dame's safety rotation was Xavier Watts in his second full year playing defense, DJ Brown and Ramon Henderson. 3 years forward, we're like Joey O'Brien's battling to be fourth. It's changed in a hurry under Marcus Freeman, in a hurry. So it has a chance to be, Andrew. It has a chance to be. There's a long way to go from where they are today of what we know today and that, but it's got a shot. Part of that's going to go back to the conversation we just had, which is what helped the 88 secondary, for example, is you had Chris Zorich and you had George Williams and you had Frank Stams and you had Andre Jones, and like that front was pretty great, and that helped the secondary. 2018, great secondary. We just got to talk. They also had a great defensive line, an All-American D tackle. You had 4 defensive ends that all got drafted in the 5th round or higher as part of that rotation. You had 2 great inside linebackers. So part of being a great secondary is, are you part of a great defense? And I think that factors into it as well. So if the D-line is as good as we hope it can be, then that's going to give the secondary an opportunity to be as good as it can be. And I think that factors in more than, can a great secondary make a good D-line great? No, it can't. But a great D-line can make a good secondary great, and a great secondary generational. So that's actually a bigger key to me than the secondary. But it's got a chance. I mean, you're talking about arguably the best cornerback since Todd Light. I don't know how arguable it'll be after this year.
Sure.
I don't even know if it'll be arguable that he's not better than Todd Light after this year. He's not yet, but after this year, he could be. One of your best safety tandems, DJ McKinney's a guy getting first-round draft pick vibes, and you're going to have a 3-year starter at nickel. it's got a shot. And your depth is really good. Really good. I mean, your most physically talented players outside of Leonard Moore and Taye Johnson are all freshmen. You know what I mean? It's pretty good.
From Justin ND Sniper, other than the DB room, what do you think is the strongest unit entering fall camp?
Are we talking about like what we know right now? Oh, strong offensive line, maybe. If we're talking about unit, if we're talking starting unit, it's quarterback, in my opinion. If we're talking, linebacker. Linebacker. Sorry, completely drew a brain fart. Linebacker. Yeah. After that, if we're talking depth plus starter, I'd probably go O-line right now. Quarterback wouldn't be as high because the starter's elite, but I have major questions about what's behind it for right now. But honestly, there's no position I look at right now, Trev, and say, I'm worried about that position.
No, I don't know. If we were to sit here and rank one, obviously one would be quote unquote the weakest, because in any ranking, something has to be last.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no position group on this team that I look at and say, yeah, this is the weakest.
Yeah.
I'm with you, but it would be linebacker. I'm with you. From Andre Tonsel, Notre Dame has a top 3 DB room amongst Power 4 schools. In your opinion, how can they become the number 1 group defensive backs in the country? I think they are already, to me.
Well, I'll say this, Andre, everybody just does what they're supposed to do. If DJ McKinney looks like here's the thing, nobody in the secondary room has to do anything they haven't already done before.
Yep.
If Adon and Taye just are who they are last year, but stay healthy. If DJ McKinney is what he was all of 2024, if Leonard Moore just repeats last year but stays healthy, if Christian Gray, like the only guy that's got to do anything different is Christian Gray has to be consistent. Like, be consistently as good as you are for stretches. Just do it all the time. Christian Gray could be a star. I truly believe that. So I think that's going to be good health and just consistency. Because like, here's the thing, like when I look at Oregon, with all due respect to the 2 young talented corners that Florida has, or that Oregon has, neither of them are in the same ballpark as Leonard Moore. But I'm more confident in the second one than I am in DJ McKinney, because we haven't seen DJ McKinney do it at Notre Dame yet, and he's coming off in an injury-filled season. We haven't seen DJ McKinney look like that since 2024. It's that. It's the known. You know, if you were someone that's going to say, hey, I like Alabama's room better, what would be the reason why? Well, everyone that you're counting on at Alabama has done that at Alabama. Now, I don't think Alabama's better, but I think Alabama is a potential to be a top 5 second. I think we had them in our top 5, didn't we, Trevor?
Yes, sir.
Because you have a great safety room. You've got guys coming back that have played it. You got a young guy coming up, Dijon Lee, that I think is going to be a really good player that played for Alabama last year. So whereas Notre Dame, you've got guys moving. You've got Christian Gray moving to nickel. You've got DJ McKinney coming in. And when you're debating elite groups, that's the type of thing that can be a separator that could allow someone to argue for Oregon or Alabama or an Ohio State or even a Georgia to be better. And I wouldn't say that they're better, but I think that would be the justification. So for Notre Dame to be there, you need DJ McKinney to be what he was in 24, and you need the transition for Christian Gray to nickel to be smooth. You do that, they're the best secondary in the country, and I don't know that it's debatable. I mean, I think they can be that good. It's not hyperbole. It's not, oh, you're Notre Dame channel. I'm just, okay, prove me wrong. Tell me how I'm wrong. You know, but I think right now there are some rooms that you can debate that with right now. And like Minnesota or Oregon with Coy Parrish, it's like, dude, just keep doing what you've been doing at Minnesota the last 2 years. There's no, well, he was really good 2 years ago, but not so much last year and that kind of thing. It's just like, dude, just be what you've been the last 2 years at Oregon. Where with Notre Dame, you need some guys to do this, you need them to do that. And I think that's where the conversation is, to where you could make a case that right now Notre Dame is not the number 1 secondary in the country. I would argue that they are. But I think it's at least debatable right now. But if DJ McKinney's 24 form, Christian Gray is just consistent and there's good health, they're the number 1 secondary, and I don't think it'll be all that close.
Yeah, Andre, the answer for me just comes down to needing to see it all come together. Put it this way, Notre Dame secondary is already at a point where we have yet to see DJ McKinney put on a gold helmet, and I've yet to watch Christian Gray take a rep at nickel in a game. And I think that they're one of the best 3. That's where they're at right now. Once I see it come together like that, I don't know if it'll be overly close. I'm with you.
But what's interesting, it's good. There's a lot of really good secondaries in college football this year, though. That's what makes this a fun debate.
Oh,
it's a really good year in the second, because there was a lot of freshmen and sophomores in college football last year in the secondary. Notre Dame's guys, but then also you look like KJ Bolden. You look at the Ellis Robinson kid at Georgia. Like, we've banged on their secondary for years. This is going to be their best secondary since the 18 to 21, 22 range. Like their 19 secondary was ridiculous with Eric Stokes and Tyson Campbell and the guys they had then, and
Reed at safety.
Yes. So they've got. I mean, this is going to be their best year in the secondary in several years since their title teams. I mean, so there's a lot, and a lot of it's because there's a lot of freshmen and sophomores that have kind of taken over college football the last couple of years, and they all had to come back. Whether some went to different teams, but they all had to come back.
Yep.
And so I think this is going to be a great year in the secondary. We did have a couple super chats. There's from Black Irish, from Chris. Sorry for being late. You're good, man. We understand life sometimes gets in the way. And then a super chat from Utah Irish 55. Drew says, "Hey, fellas, been a minute. May I ask, whatever happened to Armando Allen, and could he play on this year's team?" Armando's working at Notre Dame now, right?
I'm not sure.
I think Armando works at Notre Dame now. Let me see here. Or maybe he's coaching. I thought Armando was recently hired at Notre Dame for a job, and I'm going to try to find that out. But he was coaching college football for a little while, and I think he works. Is he working development now? Let's see if I can find it. But yeah, I do think Armando's back at Notre Dame, but I'll have to find the answer to that. I'm not 100% sure on that. But could he have played on this year's team? Not after the injury. Armando would have had a tough time cracking the rotation here. I'll say this, Trevor, that he is one of the biggest what ifs of my lifetime, because he had that really bad leg injury in high school, and he just was never the same. He never had the same explosiveness in high school.
I think I've agreed. I think I found where Armando Allen is. As of right now, I pulled up his LinkedIn, and it still says that he's the director of regional development at the University of Notre Dame. Before that, he was a special teams coordinator and the assistant running backs coach at Murray State from July of 23 to March of 24.
Yeah, I thought he was. You can talk about Armando, though. As a junior in high school, before he broke his leg, Armando Allen ran a 10.44 in the 100-meter dash.
That's moving.
Like, that was as a junior. So, Armando could cook. He could cook. He had a 14.48 in the 110-meter dash, or the 110-meter hurdles. I mean, like, Armando could move, but then he had that bad leg, and he just was never the same athlete. James Aldridge is another one. But if Armando doesn't, I'll say this: if Armando doesn't get hurt in high school, he could absolutely play on this team. He could have played on. He'd have been a star on those, because he was still a pretty good player at Notre Dame. Caught a lot of passes. Remember that long kick return for touchdown against Hawaii in the bowl game?
Yeah.
He was not out of bounds against Michigan on that touchdown screen in 2009. He was not freaking out of bounds. Armando was a good player at Notre Dame. He just was never the player he could have been and should have been had he not been injured.
One of the weirdest things about that running back duo of Armando Allen and Robert Hughes is Robert Hughes always tried to run like how Armando Allen should have been running, and Armando Allen always ran like how Robert Hughes should have been running.
He was the most physical little running back I've ever seen. He was super physical for a guy that had no business being a physical running back. I loved Armando Allen.
He was great. No, it was, and Robert Hughes was unstoppable once the running back coach had him down. It was like, "Hey, buddy, you're 235 pounds. Go run like you're 235 pounds."
Chris Gallipo still has a Robert Hughes footprint on his forehead from when Robert trucked him in 2010.
Oh yeah,
that duo should have been so good. They just played at the wrong time, and like I said, Armando Allen's injury just kept him from ever being the player he should have been. But even then, he was still, I think he's top 5 all time at Notre Dame in pass catches for a running back at Notre Dame. I'm pretty sure. I think Darius Walker might be the only one that has more, I believe. But he finished his career with 119 catches and had over 2,000 rushing yards. So he did some things. And he was a good kick returner his first 2 years as well. So he could, but he would have been so good if he didn't get injured in high school. So good. And I never met Armando, but from everybody I've met that knew him, they also said he was an awesome kid. I just have never met him, but I've heard a lot of things about. So I'm not shocked that he's now working at Notre Dame. When you hear about the kind of young man he was during his career at Notre Dame, you're like, yeah, that's a kid that's going to come back and work at Notre Dame someday. Like George West, like Amir Carlisle. None of those guys shock me that they came. Myron Tungavaloa-Mosa. It doesn't shock me that those guys have come back and worked at Notre Dame down the road. Doesn't shock me at all.
From James Delaney, do you think we're going to come to a time where we're going to look at a player who's staying all 4 years and going, he's still here? Shouldn't he be in the NFL already?
Yeah, we'll have that. We shouldn't have that because not every player is going to be a 3-year guy. You don't want every player to be a 3-year guy. But yeah, there's going to be some times when we have those conversations. And a lot of times we're going to have those conversations because like guys are getting overshadowed by other guys who are even better. And so they come back for year 4 and like, because I want to be the guy. So yeah, you're getting to that point in time.
From J. Melvin Bryan, do you like Jaden Sanders? Do you think he can be a star football player? He was a top 100 and 150 player, and Michigan really liked him.
Yeah, I think he's a good football player. I mean, I think he's a top 150 caliber player. I think there's a lot of things I like about Jaden Sanders. He's smart. He's instinctive. He's tough. He's got good range. The only question I have about Jaden Sanders as a corner is what is his top end speed? That's the only question I have with him at corner. Trevor, he's a good football player. But the top end speed is the difference between you being a top 150 player and you being a top 50 player.
Right.
You know, unless you have those other elite traits like a Benjamin Morrison had, like a Zay Hassan had before he started running a 10.5. You know what I mean? So that's really my only question. I think Jaden Sanders is a really good football player and can do. I mean, he can play. I mean, literally, he could play 5 positions in the Notre Dame defense to some degree: field corner, boundary corner, nickel, and then the 2 safety spots. To some degree, I think he could play there
for sure. From Trev's buy-sell hold glasses, after getting a season under his belt, what areas of improvement do you see for CJ Carr that will take him to the next level?
I think we've kind of chatted about this before, Trev. Just a little bit better through his progressions. Stop locking in on the receiver. He still does that a little bit too much. Being a little bit more willing to come to those backside digs and routes like that, and being a little bit more willing to kind of take some shots, take some chances in certain situations smartly. The biggest thing, though, for me with CJ is he's got to get better manipulating the pocket. Still, I think handling pressure, climbing with good footwork, knowing when to spin out, knowing what to do with the football, knowing when to, hey, just going to take the check down here. I think those are still things that are that's probably the biggest area where CJ Carr needs to improve from a technical standpoint, is just handling the pocket better. I'm saying like he doesn't panic or rush, but I don't think he always has a sound game plan for what to do when things break down. Because I think he is so much of a gunslinger. He holds onto the ball so long because he wants to take a shot that when the pressure comes, then it's kind of not panic mode, but like you got to rush to get away from it, as opposed to seeing the pressure coming and then just more of a natural slide step earlier than you would let the guy ride him out and then throw the ball, or climbing the pocket and letting it loose. And just being better there is really the biggest thing for me for CJ. He doesn't look as athletic as I know that he is all the time. And some of it's the footwork and just manipulating the pocket appropriately.
Agreed with all that. Last thing for me is also just a little bit better accuracy on deep balls. Sometimes it looks like he aims a little bit.
Outside go balls.
Yes.
The outside go ball specifically. Yeah.
Sometimes it's you just let it rip. He has the arm to get it there. We've seen it.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes just turning it loose.
Yeah. Here's a question.
From Just Your Ordinary Joe, did Stanford's fan base stop caring about football a la many ACC fan bases? If so, what changed? Product on the field?
I don't know that they ever super cared about football. I think they're like a lot of other teams. When your team happens to be good, you go because you like watching something good. But even then, I mean, there'd be a lot of gold and blue in the stadium when Notre Dame would go out to Palo Alto to play Stanford, even when Stanford was really good. So I think that's really a big part of it. I mean, remember the renovations they did in the Charlie Weiss era? they were making the stadium smaller. You know what I mean? Like, that's what the renovations were for, was to make it smaller. I think what changed is more so just California in general has just more apathetic towards sports, towards football than they used to be in general. I think
without a doubt. I mean, you see that at the next level too. I mean, for a while when the Chargers and the Rams both moved out to LA, the away teams had more fans in the stands than what the Rams or the Chargers did. You see that a lot. They want to be a basketball state with the Clippers and the Lakers.
And they just want to be a non-sports state too. I mean, there's just a state that they just don't care as much about sports.
Yeah.
But basketball is one that I think you're right. That is the one sport that still is a big draw in California. But will that be the case when LeBron's gone and the Golden State Warriors are no longer the Golden State Warriors? Like that, you know what I mean? Like, it's easy to be a Warriors fan when they've won 4 NBA championships in a period of time and the Lakers have LeBron, but will they be that way?
Sure.
When that's not the case anymore?
It's a good point. I mean, shoot, the most dedicated football fan base that they had were the Oakland Raiders, and they're gone. Right. I mean, that was a stadium
that was most rabid. Yeah.
Yes.
The Niners still have a pretty loyal fan base, but it's not like the Raiders were.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's even to a degree not as strong as it was. It's a different community. Here's the last one, Trev. This is from Salty Virginia Peanuts. Brian, how's your father doing? Thank you for asking, Salty. I do genuinely appreciate that. So the surgery for my dad went very well, as good as they hoped it would be. His body responded well to the procedure and didn't have any complications or any issues. And so they ended up releasing him last night. They said if everything goes according to plan, they would be able to send him home day of the surgery. And so he's home and he's resting today. And so far, so good. I got to call my mom after the show and check in on him because my dad always tells me everything's fine. He's one of those guys that doesn't want me to worry about him. So everything's always awesome. You know, oh, I'm fine. He was getting ready to have like a major heart surgery. I'll be fine, B. Don't worry about it. Like, it's like, look, man, when you don't tell me stuff, then I'm going to assume the worst. So just tell me the truth. But no, he's doing really well. Thank you very much for asking that. But he really appreciated, he told me this. He really appreciated the prayers that everybody gave. There was a long thread on the board, you know, with that. And the people that had the comments in the show that he watched yesterday, that really meant a lot to him. So I appreciate you all very, very much. Very much. And Salty, thank you for asking that, man. I really appreciate you. That's the kind of off-topic subject I'm okay with you bringing up.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for us here on the afternoon show on the Irish Breakdown podcast, outside of this super chat that we just got from our guy, Tyler
Evans always coming in with those late super chats because he's listening probably 30 minutes ago and he doesn't realize we're about to end. But you just got it in, Tyler. We'll do this one.
From Tyler Evans, appreciate you, man. Do you think Missouri and Nebraska would be battling every year for the Big 12 in a playoff spot every year if they never left?
Well, who also didn't leave? Is Texas and Oklahoma still in there?
Right.
That's what bothers me. Like the old school Big 12 right now would be an awesome league. Like if you had Texas and Oklahoma and like, because like, I mean, I guess it was never that. But like if you could take like what was left of the Big 12 or the Big 8 in the Southwest Conference. Like, so Arkansas left early, but like if you still had Texas and Oklahoma, Nebraska would have stayed in the Big 12, like in the early 2000s. Missouri would have stayed. That's a really good league right now, Trev. Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Missouri. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't have needed to add Cincinnati and teams like that to your league, Arizona, teams like that. You'd have a great league. And it'd be a fun, entertaining league too. Would Missouri and Nebraska be battling for a playoff spot? Possibly. You know, if we're assuming Texas and Oklahoma would be the two best teams in the league, could they be battling for that number 3 spot in the Big 12 in the playoffs? Certainly. So, yeah, I believe so.
That's how I felt about the Pac-12 the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, the old school Pac-12 with Oregon doing what they're doing right now. Washington just made a run to the championship not that long ago. Arizona State's coming along. Colorado had their 9-4 season and the Heisman winner in 2024. I feel you completely.
But the problem, everybody wants to blame bad leadership in the Pac-12 for why it collapsed, and it's true. But a big reason why the leadership was struggling to figure things out was because the fan base just stopped caring. They stopped going to games and they stopped watching games.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately not everyone. Oregon's, you know, but like there's a reason that the Big Ten wasn't dying to have Washington in the league and Oregon in the league. There's a reason they wanted the 2 LA teams and not those 2 great teams, because they don't put up great numbers. Like you take Phil Knight's money away from Oregon, and that's a very different place.
Sure.
Very different place. And it's disappointing. But that's where the route the ACC is going. So, hey, just also so everybody knows, I know Trevor's going to say this, but obviously David Filarunchu is going to make his decision at 4:30. Be on the lookout for if he chooses Notre Dame, there might be a video that pops up of us breaking that down or not. And then obviously I'll be on with Sean Stiers on IB Nation Sports Talk on the Irish Breakdown channel at 5:00 to discuss his decision as well. So we will have a live breakdown talking about whatever he decides at 5:00. But we'll also have some things to put out if he chooses Notre Dame here in about 30 minutes. But we like where things are looking for the Irish going into this announcement.
Folks, that's going to do it for us here on the afternoon show on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Like Brian said, tune into IB Nation Sports Beat tonight. I'm feeling it's going to be a pretty fun show. On your way out of this show, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends, family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But the best way to stay in tune with what we got going on here and everything Notre Dame football, be a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Brian will see you in a little bit. I will see you on Monday, and we will both be back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.